go ahead and call the meeting to order. First, if you would all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag. So next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And first, let's note, please, that Member Lorraine Price is not here this evening, and Member Rudy Garcia is not here this evening. So on the approval of the agenda, do you all have any thoughts or changes?
I recommend that we approve the agenda as is.
Second.
Okay, the only thing I would ask is that there are folks that are coming at 6:30 for the action item 10A. In the event that we're running early or such that we just need to wait till they get here before that presentation begins, we could easily go on to the next one. Alrighty, so hearing two, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That passes unanimously. For board announcements, we have first the introduction of our interpreter.
Thank you, Mr. President, Superintendent Garcia, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Carlos Martinez, and I will be serving as your interpreter for this evening. I will be situated in the back of the auditorium if you need my services. Muy buenas tardes, señor presidente, miembros de la mesa directiva y superintendente García. Yo soy Carlos Martínez y esta noche serviré como su intérprete. Estaré localizado al fondo del auditorio. Gracias.
Thank you very much. And next, which is always an absolute highlight of every board meeting, is when we get to hear from our young performers. They are going to be performing a peace song by Greg Gilpin, and this is the Gonzales Advanced Choir tonight under the direction of Judy Rotenberg. So give us a second, we're going to come around so we can see you as well. Thank you so much for coming. It's always a joy, and being able to start our meetings with our performers, variety of performers from all different schools throughout the district, it just makes the meetings very special. So we're very, very grateful. And even though she's not here tonight, very grateful to Leanne Devon, our Director of Music Education for the district, and all of the fine work she's done for many, many, many years in growing our programs. So next, any more board announcements? Ms. Cashman.
I would just like to thank everybody in the community and our school staff and our schools for the Back to School Bash. It was fantastic. You guys all did a great job, and it was nice to see a lot of people out there. So thank you. And I've got one other announcement. A lot of people have asked me, so I want to bring this up on the board going to the New Mexico School Board Association for the new changes in the election law. And some people think we're trying to suppress the vote. That's not the case. There's really a big controversy on whether we have to pay for that election. And the only monies that we have, and most school districts have, come from our operating funds. And so in order to put in money for this election, we would also be contributing to things like Water Conservation Board that has nothing to do with the schools. And so there are a lot of things. So please, I know that Inez Russell wrote an opinion for the New Mexican, and I read the online comments, but it's more than just the turnout is low. There are some legal issues, and I appreciate our lawyer pointing those out. So just be aware of that we're not trying to say we only want some portion of the electorate to vote. We want everybody to vote, but we also don't know that we can legally use the money that's given for school operations to chip in and fund an election that has more than school players involved in it. So, and this would affect all 89 districts.
We're going to be discussing that in board discussion. Ms. Noble? Nothing at this time? So the only thing I have then is special thanks to Santa Fe High School and Capitol High School for hosting the volleyball tournament of champions this last weekend, Friday and Saturday. 16 teams from all over the state. As far south as Goddard, far north is Farmington. And on both days, it was just a fantastic event. Special thanks to Larry Chavez, our Director of Athletics, to Zeke Villegas over at Capitol, and also to Luann Padilla at Santa Fe High. While the Demons and the Jaguars did well, St. Michael's ended up winning the tournament. It was the first time that a Santa Fe team had won the tournament in 20 years. And I got to tell you, and I'm just becoming like a volleyball addict, you just got to check in the paper. It's the second page of the sports section. Check on Monday and see where volleyball is being played in the district, because it's nonstop and it's so exciting. This game went to game 5. It went to, I think it was point 18. After point 10, it was 1-for-1 all the way. It was really one of the most, and I can say this without exaggeration, one of the most exciting sporting matches I have ever attended in my life. I mean, it was insane how gripping it was. And the young women on both teams, Farmington and St. Mike's, and their dedication and just their resiliency to make it that long. And it's a really long day for them. So anyway, thanks for everyone involved in the Tournament of Champions. It was an incredibly successful event. Next on the agenda, superintendent announcements.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Just wanted to let you know about Builders Lab, which is a comprehensive school improvement framework that supports school sides in identifying student achievement goals by examining teacher feedback, support, accountability, and school culture. This past June, a cohort of administrators received an intensive 4-day training on these concepts to begin their school improvement process in their schools. Next steps, on-site professional development with administrators on September the 27th, and reviewing feedback, virtual coaching. This is just one of several school improvement strategies in place. Today we had our first 2 interviews with 2 of our principals with the the superintendent's school support cabinet with Team Santa Fe, and followed up with the principals and received very good feedback on that. So that's moving along nicely. Dr. Ryan traveled to Seoul, South Korea as chair of the consortium for School Networking USA, or COSN, and he presented at the e-learning Korea International Conference. His session was in the era of the 4th Industrial Revolution. How can we prepare policies to promote education on the shift to digital in public education? And so we're very proud of Dr. Ryan and his representing the United States at that conference. On September 14th, the Remedy platform was released in part to get input from various stakeholders. Ms. General Counsel Lisa Sullivan, Assistant Superintendent Jeff Gephardt, and myself attended. Now I've been assigned to be on the steering committee as we continue to work on the remedies in the platform. And there was a press release that was issued today, and I will be forwarding that press release to you. And lastly, the New Mexico Teach Summative Report was released on September the 10th by the Public Ed Department. The data from the report confirms what we already know. The Santa Fe Public School teachers are effectively leading student learning. A strong majority, 71.2%, earned effectiveness levels of effective and highly effective or exemplary. 24% were minimally effective and 4.8% were ineffective. And we obviously will continue working with those teachers. However, there continue to be perplexing differences between school grades and New Mexico teacher effectiveness. For example, Engage, 100% of the teachers were highly effective or effective, yet the school received an F. El Camino Real has 84.85% of teachers exemplary, highly effective, and effective, yet the school received an F. Cesar Chavez also received an F, but had 63% as effective or highly effective or exemplary. So these disconnects continue. You know, we would like to see more transparency on this New Mexico Teach all the way around, school grades in particular. Today we had an opportunity to, as part of Team Santa Fe, meet with the principal from El Camino Real. And what was really fascinating about that discussion is the percent of teachers highly effective, the growth that they've made in proficiency, but they also received an F. And we think one of the issues is that those cohorts, one of the most common factors is your mobility rate. And they have a very low mobility rate, believe it or not. It's a pretty stable school. So they're probably being compared to other schools with similar mobility, but are probably higher income. So anyway, just a little bit of follow-up. We don't feel like making a separate presentation on that, but thought it was important for you to be aware. And that concludes my announcements.
Terrific. Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Next item on the agenda is public forum. And Dr. Ryan?
We have one person that has signed up for the public forum, Carol Johnson, and with that I'll read the rules. We ask that you please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. Staff will monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit, and I will give you a 30-second warning when your time's almost up. Public commentary and dialogue is allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it's on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. And finally, please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. So, Ms. Johnson.
Members of the board, superintendent, staff, and audience, My name is Carol Johnson. My son had attended Santa Fe Public Schools from kindergarten until he graduated from Santa Fe High in 1999. He now has a son at Amy Beale in 4th grade and a son at Tierra and Cantata in 7th grade. I'm here today really to introduce myself. I was selected to be on the PED Secretary's Family Advisory, and I had sent you emails to that effect. But I just wanted to introduce myself to you and the staff and anybody in the audience, anybody that's online. I want to advocate for Santa Fe Public Schools, and to do that effectively, I feel I need input from the community and other schools. I'm kind of involved in my grandson's schools, and a couple others, but any input would be valuable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck with your service. Thank you for that. And is there anyone that didn't have an opportunity to sign up that needed to speak on public forum? Okay, nope. And so next item on the agenda this evening is union update, and Ms. Grace Mayer, the president of the union, is here tonight. It's not on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Grace Mayer, NEA Santa Fe president and art teacher at Milagro Middle School. I've come to talk about a couple issues, and I'm just going to start reading, and one will flow into the next a little bit. The recent ruling by Judge Singleton regarding New Mexico state school funding stated that public schools are not funded appropriately, and this may have caused irreparable harm to students if schools are not improved. Evidence gathered over 10 years lays out a clear picture that student learning English as a second language, special education students from multicultural backgrounds have not been given opportunities to learn because of lack of educational resources. Judge Singleton said New Mexico needs to improve teacher quality by supporting teachers who have suffered from low salaries, a punitive evaluation system, and a general lack of support. She recommends putting more money into the most effective programs and sustaining them over time, monitoring progress. As a plaintiff in this lawsuit, Santa Fe Public Schools board members should understand that given the judge's ruling, we should not be demanding that students meet arbitrary standardized testing markers on a yearly or monthly basis in the name of so-called accountability. Sufficient funding and teacher support is critical if we are to make gains in student achievement. MAPS tests are computer adaptive tests that changes as the student answers questions correctly or incorrectly. The questions get harder as they answer questions correctly. It tests reading, language usage, and math. It is expected that most students get, on average, 50% of the questions correct. It informs instructions for the teacher regarding that particular student, and over time, with the use of multiple tests, can be used to show student growth. MAPS is never supposed to be used as a high-stakes test, measuring proficiency rates among students. Human learning is not on a prescribed timeline. Students learn and master skills at their own rate. Reading is a good example of this. Many students learn to read by the middle to the end of first grade, others sooner, and others as late as the end of second grade. Some students at this age are a whole year older than their peers, and this may account for some of this. Research has also been done that indicates that girls acquire verbal and reading skills before most boys, who develop math and spatial relationship skills, which is basically physics, before girls. In older students, they sometimes don't realize they've learned something until long after they were taught it. All we can do as educators is to inspire students, opening their minds to new and exciting ideas, and make a safe place for them to practice. Practice what they learn, not for the sake of scoring higher on a test, but to master skills that will one day be the measure of their success as citizens. I know there's a resolution being put forward tonight, Strategic Housing Initiative. NEA Santa Fe has pushed the school board to look into teacher housing, and we want to encourage these efforts. However, several issues are of concern. We believe it needs to be a lottery system that's available to all tier-level teachers. There is a housing shortage in Santa Fe. Rentals are, for two-bedroom apartments, are $900 to $1,200 per month. This has an average that's much lower. It says $935 in there. I don't know where that came from, but if you check around, they're considerably higher. Teachers that are moving here from other states will find it very difficult to find housing, regardless of whether or not they're a level 1, a level 2, or a level 3 teacher, because of the shortage of available units to them. They also may have reciprocity in licensure with another state, so they may come here and receive a level 2 license. So I don't feel we should exclude them from the possibility of getting housing through the district if this works out, because they have taught in another state, but they're coming to an environment where they're going to be in the same boat as everyone else, trying to scramble for affordable housing. The other issue is I believe that the city has a responsibility to house its community, and I think they need to be a partner with the Santa Fe Public Schools in trying to figure out how to make that happen. So I would hope that the mayor and the city council would meet with you and try to come up with plans on how to manage that. They of course have properties and departments that deal with that, and I'm sure Ms. Noble can tell you about some of those. And that partnership, I think, should be welcomed by them. As we build our community, we need teachers that are skilled to come and stay here and be able to afford to live here. As an alternative to this housing issue, I'm going to put forth another idea that we've been discussing for a few years, that we have our district open an early childhood care center from birth to 3 years old, and have it be free to employees of the district making less than a certain salary, and potentially like a sliding scale for above, let's say, $40,000 or $50,000. This has the added benefit to incoming pre-K and kindergarten students that will go to this program, as it would be an educational environment that would be enriching, especially for early childhood brain development. Additionally, we could grow our own early childhood workforce employees, our EAs that graduate, that work at these places. I'm sorry. Let me reread this. Additionally, we could grow our own early childhood workforce employees, EAs, and potentially teachers by having high school students intern at this center and potentially go into that field. Certainly, we can partner with the community college, who also has an early childhood center and also provides that educational background in terms of certificates for those workers. That is it.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Just on the last thing about the early childhood, I think that's brilliant. I don't think instead of or anything, I think it's just in addition to, that's a great idea for our district and others, to where there's early childhood, to have the care available for our staff. So, I mean, it's a money issue, of course, but I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you. And I hope you stay for the discussion on the resolution. The next items on the agenda are consent. And, it's funny, generally we go through consent, and when we've had board review, we've gone through consent because we've already gone through everything in board review, so it's usually one vote that takes care of everything. But this time, and I think it's important that we note, there are certain things that need to be pulled off for discussion. So if it's okay, on consent item 6A, item 3, borrow 27. You all have that in front of you? So I think it's of special note that all of the work that we did, right? I don't know how long ago it was. 4 months? Is that what it says? That, yeah, in the May 18, when we were looking at the funds that were going to come to the district from the sale of Alvord, that essentially now we're going to be moving that money into our budget since we have the money to move forward on these initiatives. And because, let's see, May is the 5th month and this is September. So because that was 4 months ago, I think it's just worth noting for the public, for those that don't go on the website and drill deep enough to see what it is that the board decided on, that I won't give all the, there's, yeah, I will actually, that in recruiting, recognizing, and training staff, there's $160,000 for an emergency management position, $25,000, school safety and social workers, $350,000, and that was in direct response to the idea that maybe, and by the way, I never said to armed guards anywhere, ever, 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 regardless of what was reported. But the whole idea is if we really look at the mental health of our students and see the red flags before something happens through social workers and guidance counselors, that we can make a lot of progress. $350,000, athletic department at 85, recruiting, I'm sorry, I missed a line there. PAX 12, would you explain that really quickly? Dr. Garcia, the PAX 12 Schools Initiative, it's $240,000.
That's basically providing training and actually the materials on positive behavior. It's anti-bullying. It's just all the kind of positive behaviors that we want to see in school that we think make our schools safer.
Great. And so we're able to do that to 12 schools. Moving forward on the attributes of a graduate initiative that the board worked on well over a year ago in a retreat. And so now integrating all of that work into curriculum and a framework, that's $50,000. And this is exciting, especially given Ms. Noble's resolution from 2 weeks ago, expanding district-wide computer science and coding programs. And that's $250,000 as well. Increasing our math and science initiatives, $150,000. The first grade literacy kickoff, we've spoken about that quite a bit over the last year, and that's the idea that we want our children, this is kind of modeled after another district back east, but we'd like our children to be English language literate at the end of first grade. And while we recognize, for instance, what Ms. Mayer was saying, sometimes people learn earlier or later, first grade can be that goal, and then basically aligning everything pre-first grade so that in kinder and in preschool, all those necessary steps are being taken to make sure to support that initiative. We wanted to restore money back to administration. That was $100,000, and that was relative to increases that through the money from PED. Restoring some professional development and associate substitutes, $375,000. Increasing our budget for family and community engagement, $30,000, and then also some of our community capacity building contracts were $100,000. So these are sometimes when we have, these are most of them not recurring, and when we have extra funds, really important for the board, and I know that Lorraine and Rudy would say the same thing if they were here tonight, to start having initiatives that, creative initiatives to move the district forward.
Mr. President,
Yes, to Dr. Garcia.
may I clarify something?
Of course.
On the restore back to admin and restore back professional development, it was really when we had cut that from the operational
Right.
budget. So we're not really adding anything new. We had proposed to cut it, and then when this one-time money came forward, the board said to go ahead and restore that. I also want to clarify that the first grade literacy is the it's not a, it is English language arts, but not English, you know,
Right.
just to clarify.
Well, yeah, the terminology, correct. Thank you. Anybody, any comments on that at all? Or, I mean, because we worked on that a lot, so it's pretty great that that's now moving forward. So on contracts over 50, yes, Ms. Noble.
So now, it was my understanding we were maybe going to look at this again during our retreat in light of the communities and schools conversation, and personally I would love any updates from the superintendent and her staff as to whether things have changed. As we were doing this, you'll recall the packs moved a little bit in pricing, and I just wonder if we want to do this now, tonight. My understanding was that we were going to relook at this at our retreat.
So, am I correct? We're not spending, we're budgeting it, but that doesn't mean, I mean, we're actually spending it. It's in the budget for these items. I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Cashman, and you can speak for yourself on this, that you wanted the CIS money to come from cash, not from these initiatives?
Yeah, and I think it's, these initiatives, we budgeted back in May, if the dollars became available, and then we put money, some of that money into cash reserves. And so I'm not, I mean, the board, I wasn't here at that board meeting, but the board tabled that. I'm willing to take it up in our retreat. In fact, that's one of the things I did ask Tim to look at, but I'm not willing to change this budget. I'm thinking that we need to have, if we're going to do communities in school, and I know I'm going to probably be meeting with them this week, just so they can fill me in on a couple of things, and I know you've met with them. But I think that needs to come out of cash reserve rather than reallocating these funds, because one of the areas that was under discussion at that board meeting I missed on August 21st was to take it out of the social workers, and that's one of the things I think we told the community. This is how we're going to provide additional security, is by making sure we think that there's a mental health piece to be able to identify, and so I still want to keep that there. So
Me too. I'm fine doing the CIS from cash. So, Dr. Garcia.
So I think the staff went on the notion that the board voted on this, and that we would bring bars when the money was available. And so because the board did vote on it, for example, PACS, you know, we had to move forward with the contract. So there's a few of these that we've already started moving on, knowing that the bars would come and we would move the money up. So just.
Okay, great. Yes, Ms. Noble.
And it's my recollection, this is the entirety of the Alvord sale, that we didn't put additional money into cash reserves, that this is the total amount. I didn't think we put, just want to clarify that, I don't think we put extra money into cash reserves.
That's correct, I believe, and Richard could probably speak to that, or Dr. Garcia. This is the entirety of the Alvord. Where we put money back into cash reserves was from the general budget, where we brought it back up to, because, you know, they had rated it, so we brought it up to an amount that was where we wanted to be.
I believe that when that SCG was increased, we added that to the reserves. I can't remember the amount, about 700,000 or something like that, Mr. Halford.
Yeah. Yes, Superintendent Garcia, Board President Carrillo. The actual sale, the amount that's on the actual PD budget template, $2,420,000, represents the actual sale. So at the time, we expected it to be around the $2,265,000, but it came in slightly more. So I believe we put it in a other energy line item for now.
Okay.
They do make us budget everything, so we
Right.
have it there, but it did come in slightly different.
So, but if we had to, since that was, so is that like 140,000 or something, the difference is what I'm kind of hearing?
Yes, about
Okay,
that.
so if we had to, I know you have to put it in a line item for PED, but if we had to, then that is 140 that we could reallocate if we needed to.
Definitely. It's not spent, it's just budgeted there for
Fantastic.
now.
Because I know that Ms. Cashman wanted to get a new Subaru for each of the girls, and it's kind of important, wasn't it? No, so we're good.
So,
Thank you.
okay.
So the next item's contract over 50. Is there any one that anyone wants to? Yes, Ms. Noble.
I am wondering about the first one on the list, the additional $131,000 for Decker Parish Sabatini increase requested for modifications to include demolition, grading, and sidewalk extensions.
Ms. Wagner, please.
Board President Creo, Board Member Noble, Superintendent, Capitol High School is moving into phase 2 of a construction project that was funded over 2 bond cycles, and we are retaining the same architect. So Decker Parrish and Sabatini will just continue the design work for phase 2, and this is an extension of their contract to begin that work.
Is there an additional, I'm like looking at you thinking you just have more to say.
No, I appreciate that. It just doesn't quite line up with what's in the, I'm just wondering about the demolition, grading, and sidewalk extensions. It sounds like it's more of a retention and more design work from the explanation there. I guess my question is, did we not budget for demolition, grading, and sidewalk extensions, or is that inaccurate there?
The description may not perfectly match the extension of their design work, but the extension of the contract is to continue phase 2 design.
Thank you. And then wishes were good. Are the minutes okay with everybody? Have a chance to review, we're all good? All right, then let's go ahead and take a roll call vote on consent, please. All those, well, first a motion. Motion to pass consent?
So moved.
And
Second.
great. So Ms. Noble?
Yes.
Ms. Cashman?
Yes.
Mr. Carrillo votes yes. Consent passes. Next item on the agenda is board update and follow-up. Any at this time for the board? Hearing none, next item on the agenda is the superintendent update and follow-up.
Thank you. So we had the Back to School Bash, as was mentioned earlier, and we have a little video for you to see, and I think it captures the spirit of the Back to School Bash. My deep appreciation to the principals, the directors, teachers, counselors, staff, and of course the district team, led by Jeff Gephardt and his crew, and all the cabinet. Everyone participated, so thank you to everyone. I have to say that I think this was the biggest one yet, and we were really spread out and it felt really crowded, but if I was going to give one theme for the day, I would say it was smiles all around. Would you not agree? I mean, there were just smiles everywhere. Yeah, people were just happy, and it was just a wonderful, happy day for our community. So thank you to all. I do want to say, first of all, did we win the volleyball tournament, Dr. Lujan? So I think they beat the fire department. I mean, our scrappy little Bad News Bears team beat a bunch of who we thought was some heavy-duty competition, so congratulations. I know that Nusenda, did they work with Presbyterian Medical Services, or was it St. Vincent's with the helmets?
Oh, that was St. Vincent, wasn't it? Yeah, Christus.
It was Christus St. Vincent,
St.
and a
Vincent.
little shout out to Elena Hayek in our SFPS Green department for getting out there and making that happen too.
Yeah, so Christus St. Vincent's, but they gave away, I don't know how many helmets.
Hundreds.
Yeah, bike helmets for our kids, and fitted them, which was just amazing. The theme was STEAM, and there were all kinds of wonderful tables with different kinds of experiments and what neat STEAM activities for all the children that came by. This year it was so busy that I'd try to make it, down the way to some of the tables, and I'd get pulled back, and then I'd start again. Didn't get to even have time to play chess this year. For some reason, it seemed like we were so busy, but it was just a great day, and thank you to all who participated.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garcia. It was couldn't have been more perfect weather, and then all the schools were there, and it was just a really fun event. So thank you, staff, because we're very cognizant of what it takes to put an event of that magnitude together. And so thank you very much for showing our district in such a great light to our community and the community members having such a great time. It was great. The third annual. I know, right? Okay. So next, any other superintendent announcements? You sure you don't want to make something up, or? Okay. So next item on the agenda then is our presentation for safety and security of our students and staff. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. And this is going to be a quick high-level review. We're not going to go over all the pieces on the PowerPoint, but our Director for Safety and Security, Mario Salvides, just to let you know a little bit of, I was impressed when he presented this report to me, and I said, we just need to share that with our board and our community, that we really are paying attention to school safety and doing all that we can. You're on the challenges slide, but I don't think you want to be there, do you?
I'm sorry? No.
I said, you're on the challenges slide.
No.
I don't think you want to be there. So who's driving? Who's driving for you?
Mr. Geffert.
Oh, it's Wagner, Miss Wagner. And now it's blue. Okay, let's go.
Okay, very well. So I just wanted to bring to, President Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, we just wanted to bring to you some of the items we've been doing before school started and when school started. This includes myself, Mr. Mark Lewandowski, who is the new emergency management specialist, and Ms. Margaret Romero, who helps us out. So prior to the school year beginning, what we did is we all are familiar with the RhinoWare systems that went into place. We all went out to every single school, and it was guaranteed that every door that had this RhinoWare installed, that it was capable of being unlocked from the outside. I have a young child who panics when she gets locked in a room. I said, I am not going to have that with any other kid panicking that because they can't seem to figure out just to lift up the lever. So we made sure we can disengage the RhinoWare at every single door it was installed in. We were satisfied with that with the company as well. We also identified some of the best practices in using the RhinoWare. And what I mean by that, if you go to Santa Fe High School at the Commons building, it's a very large building. They had to take many RhinoWares. And when you first walk in, you kind of say, how does this work? Myself and Mr. Lewandowski walked it. We invested time into it to figure out what would be the best scenario-based use of this RhinoWare. If it's a large group at the Commons building having lunch, or if it's a small class, we talked to the staff and told them this is the manner that you want to be using this system to maximize its ability to create a safe place for these students. So we walked through that. We also visited school sites that had not yet had the installed product and ensured that the places that were going to be installed were the best places for them to be installed at before the company moved in and went ahead and conducted the installation. Another thing that was very critical prior to the start of school was we met with Santa Fe Police Department at Gonzales Community School, and we actually had two different sessions of training with their day shift patrol officers, men and women, to ensure that they understand how to use the RhinoWare breaching tool so they can disengage it in an emergency. If that way they can get to our our staff and our students much more rapidly if the need exists. We also provided Captain Marvin Polk, reverting back to Mr. Lewandowski, Captain Marvin Polk with date breaching tools for day shift so that the officers and staff or commanders could have them. That way there's no concern that they can't get into these classrooms and render the aid if it's ever necessary. Additionally, prior to the start of the school year, myself, Ms. Romero spoke to several members of the school system here, the Santa Fe Public Schools, which is custodians, coaches, kitchen staff, and so forth, so we can get them more familiar with the system of the Rhino Wear, the protocols for safety, and re-emphasize why we have locked doors where we have them, why we can't let you leave during a lockdown even though you have a second job that you have to get to. And I think it was received very well. I'm gonna have to say, thank goodness to my upbringing, me being able to speak Spanish fluently was very helpful during a lot of these meetings because most of the staff is Spanish speaking, and it was nice to be able to make sure that they understand or understood what I was trying to tell them instead of an interpreter trying to convey the message I was trying to send through. One of the other things we met with the Securitas, our security company, to try to set down the expectations of their guards, what we want for them, how we want them to work out. We did have a meeting with the representative of the company, plus several guards prior to the start of school. One of the bigger things that I think, and I have to give a lot of credit to Ms. Romero, Ms. Margaret Romero, is we condensed, simplified, and created cheat sheets we can also call go-bys. And these sheets are for evacuations, lockdowns, shelters in place, fire drills, because we tell them, do a fire drill, and here's what you should be doing. Well, we kind of broke it down to a more systematic approach, somewhat like we used to do the police department. When you arrive somewhere, you create the scene, you isolate this. Here it's, if you have a fire drill, you do step 1, 2, 3, and it's kind of guiding you all the way through. Makes it a little bit simpler for anyone to go ahead and run through a drill or an actual event where you're very nervous, you don't know exactly what to do. This helps out to give you a systematic approach of lists of what to do during these particular drills or incidences. What we did once school started, we sat down with myself and Mr. Lewandowski and Mr. Romero, and we created basically a beginning of school year sheet, inspection sheet. So we went out and we created this sheet and said, what are we being asked most about now that there's a couple of first days of school? So this sheet is not completely all-inclusive of everything we're doing, but it generally speaks about we're getting a lot of access cards requests. So we create this cheat sheet that when we go to the school, we're going to ask about this particular item if you need it done right then and there on site. Burglary alarms, cameras needed to be updated. Crosswalks, maybe they're questioning where the crosswalk is and we can do better. Door stops, there's become an issue with ADA compliance. They've been asking questions of how come I can't get a door stop? We explain to them. I think it's always having to explain to them why something can't be done or will be done so that they can buy into it and understand where we're coming from. We had Raptors, radios, the Raptor system, Rhino Wear, safety vets, etc. That we created this checklist that we work directly with the principals of the particular respective school to ensure that we give them a service that's best for them, and we kind of address all the concerns and issues that they're having. So additionally to that, what we have been doing is we've been visiting schools regularly, and I know this is just the start of the 5th week. It's been a challenge for us, being a 3-person team, but we've gone to Ramirez Tomas where they had concerns about the traffic flow or traffic design. We kind of came up, we gave them some suggestions and advice of how to go ahead and mitigate through some of the concerns they were having. Milagro was another place that was visited by Ms. Romero and Mr. Lewandowski. That was an all-day event there about radios, radio assessment, traffic assessment, traffic flow, et cetera, with recommendations. We went to Mandela regarding some fencing issues or recommendations of where we can put additional access controls. Now, what I mean by additional access controls, what we find is it's common practice for humans to make it easier for us to come and go from a place. So if I have a locked door and I don't have a key, I'm going to prop it open because that's my easiest access point back into the school, right? So why don't we just identify that to high volume, traffic volume? So let's give them the access back into the school so that they don't create those breaching points in the school. So that's when we went there and we said, okay, this is something you need, and we put in work orders to put another access control box there so they can come in through that particular door, and it alleviates leaving the door propped open and for anybody to walk in. Santa Fe High School, we've done several visits to Santa Fe High School. One all-day visit related to radios, repairs, radio audit. We updated the door schedules because the system that controls the doors was updated, and for some reason they decided to revert back to a previous programming. So we had to go back to do programming in every door. So Ms. Romero took the time to go to each building and ensure, log into that particular door and say, is this on the right schedule that you need it? Yes. And that's where she started working systematically through the entire school. As you can imagine, that school is humongous, so it took her all day long to go ahead and figure that out. But it's a service that the schools need so they can remain them safe and that's as we expect them to. Gonzalez was also an all-day visit. Once again, radio repairs, ensuring radios are working, and conducting a radio audit. El Camino Real was identical to that. Capitol High School, we've had various visits there. At school, I love working with them. Mr. Richard Padilla especially. Oh, he's awesome. Every time he calls me, I say, I can't come to your school because you want to put more on my plate to do, but I'm happy to be here. And he's a fun guy to go and talk to and enjoy working with him a lot. Nino Otero, we spent a full day there as well. And we've just done very, very extensive various visits at different schools with small little problems that need to be fixed immediately. One example was E.J. Martinez. We had homeless sleeping underneath the playground. They had dug out all the little bark and they slept under, they had their blankets, a pillow, and everything else. And Mr. Lewandowski was identified it and brought it to our attention and said, look, this isn't dangerous. If the little kids get there early before lunch, before breakfast, I should say, and they go to the playground, they don't want a homeless person suddenly popping out and scaring them, or even if they're joking, grabbing by the arm, by the leg or something, that's going to terrify them. So we immediately got on the on the phone with police, with facilities. It was corrected within a day. The brush was also cut down because homeless was finding camps beyond the fence line. So we asked for that brush to be trimmed down. It was taken care of within a day. Kudos to facilities because they really helped us out. And I really felt that we walked away from E.J. Martinez where the kids would no longer have to deal with a homeless person sleeping under their playground. Some of the challenges, I am not a person who's going to hide some of the challenges that I'm facing. I'm going to come out and tell you straight up about them. One of them is our security company has been having difficulty staffing the requirement of guards at each school is required by contract. I'm amenable to work with anybody, especially to help them out and make sure we get there. But we got to the point where we had a very long discussion this morning with the company, and I'm holding their feet to the fire, for the lack of a better term, because I told them my priority, I don't care about Walmart, I don't care about anyone else. My priority is the Santa Fe Public Schools and our students. I said, that's where you need to staff me. If I'm not on the list of top of priorities, so I can tell the superintendent, you are the priority of this company, we have to have a longer discussion because our students are priority to me. So they assured us that they was, as of tomorrow, they would have even advanced shuttling officers from Albuquerque here because they don't have the pool to ensure that the high schools and all my locations that we have are fully staffed with the guards that are needed. That's a challenge. Another challenge that we saw when we began was the crossing guards. I'll update one thing by saying challenge over 98% overcome for the crossing guards. As of Friday, we're 100% staffed. Now we're trying to just to staff for 2 or 3 more so that we have backfill for when somebody calls in. This was a bit of a challenge initially. Mr. Lewandowski and I actually took on crossing guard duties in the mornings at different sites so that we can ensure that the students were safe. We did make an evaluation that we could maybe not staff at there, but staff somewhere else where it was lacking, where the flow of the pedestrian flow was higher, so we would move to other schools. But we put our best foot forward to try to help the students get safely to school and go back home safely as well. The radios, there's lots of radios in the district. What we found is we sent them out to be refurbished. I didn't really agree with the level of service we had received. Therefore, Mr. Lewandowski, Mr. Romero, and myself have taken upon us to re-inspect every single radio to ensure that there's that communication within the school from the principal onto all the staff members they're using to maintain safety within the school. So we're in the process of completing that audit and repairs, and it'll be ongoing. Access cards was a big challenge for Ms. Romero with almost 200 new employees. Everybody needing access to build that profile and then deliver the access card. Became a little bit daunting, but we're managing there. We're getting there. I helped out Ms. Romero learn how to use the system. And the Raptor system, something new, but what I've really found is a great majority of the schools are really, really buying into it. And in fact, I'm getting a little bit of the guilt trip of those that are in school saying, what about us? How come we don't have Raptor? And we say, it's coming sometime soon, we'll get you Raptor 2, which is kind of like technologies, and which doesn't have the volume of parents maybe going there and whatnot. But the focus was on schools, and I really believe that they're really buying into the product and using it. I get calls and questions of what should I do here, or should I do there. I really enjoy answering them, I don't mind. And the last part here is our commitment. So our commitment is this. And
Before you get to the commitment,
Sure.
just want to give the board a little just advanced notice about something that we don't have the plans worked out yet, but Mr. Romero and staff informed me that I'm, one, a security nightmare, and two, that the way we're set up in this building is not really the best that we could have. And so they have some recommendations. He's been working with Mr. Romero from facilities, and but just want to give you a heads up that probably in a month or two, we'll be letting you know what they're recommending for our building. But I have told them that I don't want to do anything here until all of our facilities are secure, and I'd rather that they be taken care of first.
So the last part is our commitment. So I'd like to just read it off of this because this is what we came up together. Is the security and safety team is dedicated and committed to adapting to today's challenges, improving security measures, and researching and testing new technology. But most of all, we are focused on providing a desired customer service model whereby each school receives individualized attention to address its concerns and needs. This model will require frequent visits to schools where the team can work in collaboration with school staff to resolve concerns or issues. Together, as I state, we can keep our schools safe. And go Santa Fe, Team Santa Fe.
And I want to thank you, Mr. Salvidis, new to the district and really has adapted well and been well received. And Mr. Lewandowski, I think, has been a nice addition to the team. And so thank you for your hard work and being a part of our cabinet. We enjoy having you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'll stand for any questions.
Do you guys have anything? Ms. Cashman?
Not a question per se, just a comment. Thank you for taking safety so seriously, because I don't think our kids can learn or our teachers can teach unless they're in a safe environment. So that's really a big priority for me as a board member, and I'm sure the other board members feel the same. So thank you. Great presentation. I'm glad that Rhino-Ware is in our buildings. I would just throw this out in general for people that might be listening, but this might even be a good briefing at parent-teacher meetings, so parents are more informed of what's happening at their schools. So some of the PTCs might reach out to you and ask you if you're available to give a briefing.
Thank you, ma'am. Absolutely.
Ms. Noble, anything? On slide 2, is there a, and I'm not saying we need to do this, it may be expensive, and I don't know if it is happening, like in a place like the Commons, because there are so many doors so spread out, is there a way for that building to go automatically locked down, where someone pulls a lever, presses a button, and all of the doors, the Rhino enacts?
President Carrillo, board members, Superintendent Dr. Garcia. Currently, the system does not have such a product that would engage all the rhinos at one time. So no, there isn't.
Okay, so you go around manually, which is good. I mean, it can be done quickly, but I was just curious.
But if I may add to that, you don't necessarily want that, because what if it's a vacant room that could be used by somebody where one room has already been filled up or full up with children and the rhino's been activated? It doesn't allow the students access to the other room if they all lock at the same time. So we want it manual operation, so that way we can say, maximize the capacity, it's time to lock down.
Right.
Those inside lock it down.
Okay. And I was thinking more places like the Commons, where it's one massive room with many, many entries and exits as opposed to individuals. But I understand. No, perfect. So on slide 3, the note I have to myself is the gyms, relative to security in the gyms. And even I would say at athletic events, and because one of the things that just being on this board, being cognizant of when I was, at Capitol over the weekend, but also at Santa Fe High on Saturday, and just during athletic events in general, anyone can go in, anyone comes out, pay the $5 or whatever it might be. And then in some cases, because of some of the exits, emergency exits that there are on the different gyms, having access to the campus then. So what are we doing about, I would say, security for athletic events and gyms specifically?
President Carrillo, board members, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, regarding that, obviously for security for the events, we're using Securitas, the company, to go and staff security guards there. Directly related to Rhino, where in these areas, they exist. Staff knows where it's at. So particularly Capitol High School. If you go into their gym, into their lockers, you will find that multiple lockers have the Rhino wear, and we spent almost a half a day with myself, Mr. Lewandowski, Mr. Padilla, trying to maximize the amount of people we could hold inside those lockers. So currently we have a large space in there, and I thought, personally, my image was Santa Fe High School and Capitol High School basketball game. How many people can I put in this room, in these rooms, if we needed to, right? Of course, we're going to eventually come to a full level where we can't accommodate anymore. But that's the dynamics of the situation if it ever does arise on us. But there is a measure in place at each high school.
But I think, we've talked about this, we've been having discussions about out of the ordinary, before school, during lunch, after school, at sporting events. And it's something that has been on our radar that we continue to discuss, and how do we drill for those events? But it is on our radar.
On that note, I remember it was a presentation, I don't know, several months ago, and when there were all, remember there were all those, like, you were showing us what was available around the country. Some of them just crazy, not only crazy expensive, but crazy, like, why on earth would anybody ever want to do this? But one of them, and I think I remember us discussing it, there was the idea of having a video that is shown, us producing our own video for our own campuses. Okay, great.
I saw one draft of the script. It's currently in, I think it's being edited, and it's supposed to be brought to me again for one last final review. So it is in production.
Pre-production. Okay, great. Then that's good to hear. And then on slide, what did you say? No, they haven't shot it yet. Right. So slide 4. So I guess in your walkarounds, are you finding that, because this was one of the biggest possibilities of breach, and we used to see it everywhere all the time, people propping open a back door. Mm-hmm. Are you finding that happening less and less to almost not at all?
President Carrillo, board members, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, it still happens, but I've taken a different approach of not lecturing them, is actually saying, if this is a normal traffic flow that you use to come and go, then let's make it easy for you to come and go and keep the security in place. So why not put in that swipe card? Okay, for example, great. At Gonzalez, they don't have a swipe card by the gym, but that's a frequently used door. It's very inconvenient for them to come out of the gym, walk all the way to the front, and go back inside. It doesn't work with the workflow, right? So we're going to install one there.
Great. No, I think that's fantastic, because I know that was a huge issue over the years. Boy, the homeless thing on my note on EJ, like in the Arroyo behind, thank you for seeing to that. And then I asked you about that, so just thank you. Mm-hmm. I mean, would you say, because I told myself I was going to ask this question, are our schools safe?
President Carrillo, board members, Dr. Garcia, superintendent, absolutely. I really do believe our schools are very safe.
I do too.
I send my daughters there, and if they weren't safe, I don't think.
And that's what I wanted to hear you say, because I think the community sometimes gets confused about day-to-day safety and what happens if there's that one person that goes to the outdoorsman some morning, buys a rifle, and decides to go nuts. They can do it in 15 minutes. Just go, pick up a rifle. Mm-hmm. And so thank you for saying that, because I believe that to be the case as well. And I know that our district is doing everything possible in that regard. So,
yes, Dr. Carrillo, board members, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, one more thing before you excuse me or dismiss me, is I had to state that there has been staff members in the Santa Fe Public School have really praised and given kudos to Mr. Lewandowski and Ms. Romero for the dedication they put forward to each individual school, which is nice to hear that a principal calling and say they're amazing. So,
great.
Thank you.
Well, good news. Thank you very much. We're still expecting some of our speakers to come on item 10A, they haven't arrived yet, so we're going to go to 10B, which is the allocation. So we're under action now. The allocation of $30,000 for the sufficiency lawsuit, and that from the sale of properties. B there. Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As you know, we are one of the 6 plaintiff districts. The Center on Law and Poverty, has not collected any money over the last 2 years. And now, as they're preparing the interrogatories and all of the work that is related post-decision and pre-appeal, they are asking the larger districts to donate or to pledge $30,000. Actually, not pledge, allocate $30,000 for the cost for the legal services necessary to ensure proper implementation of the order. Our share is $30,000. I recommend that we move forward with that. And I think I am one of, I think 2 or 3 of the districts that are, maybe 2 that are on the steering committee. So Santa Fe Public Schools is well represented been throughout this process.
Terrific. Ms. Noble?
I want to say thank you to the superintendent for her work on this, and as Vice President Cashman has done frequently, to thank the previous board that went ahead and had the courage to work on this lawsuit, and I will move for approval.
I'll second it.
And the only additional discussion would be just a statement on my part in saying that glad to be a part of a district that had the wherewithal to do this, because I really believe that if Santa Fe had not stepped up, and then with it, our council went around the state, and he got 5,000 here, 10,000 there, 2,000 someplace else. But had Santa Fe really not stepped up when called to do so, I don't know that there would have been the resources for this case to have continued as it did. So, thanks to previous boards, thanks to all of us for continuing this forward, and I look forward to seeing what's next in the legislature and the allocation, and how we strategize to responsibly use any new funds that we get. And one of the things that is kind of interesting to me over the last several weeks, whenever I read articles that are written about different people commenting, not one that I've read so far in the New Mexican or the Journal has mentioned recurring versus non-recurring expenses. That phrase, right? Because we're always thinking about that, so that we don't get ourselves in a hole, So anyway, let's do we don't need to do a roll call on this. So all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. So the allocation of $30,000 for the sufficiency lawsuit passes. That's exciting. So what we're going to do right now, we can do one of 2 things, and it's up to the 2 of you. There are 2 folks from the county that are supposed to be here, and I imagine they're just running a few minutes late because no one ever knows really when something's going to come up on an agenda here. So we can move to board discussion and move back to the action item 10A. Would that be okay with y'all? Okay. First item on board discussion, update student pledge against gun violence. And I don't know that you were here then, Kate, when we passed that resolution. No, you weren't. It was like 4 years ago when Miranda first came to us, and we led the state. We were the first district to pass the student pledge, and then it went around to other districts. Some said no. Tried to pass it at the New Mexico School Boards Association. They said no. But I'm happy to say that we've stood behind this. And so, Superintendent, do you have an update on that?
I do, and November 12th has been selected as the day that we hope to have district-wide children signing the pledge. We're looking at a weeks-long activities. Sue O'Brien and Miranda will be working together, but also with Dr. Lomax and the curriculum staff, so that we have age-appropriate activities all the way through. So that week, which would be, what, the 7th? You said it would culminate on the 12th. Or are you saying you want to start on the 12th? Is it the week of November 12th? Okay, because on my text message, we met this morning. She and I had not been able to meet on this until today, but it will be that week, and we will give you plenty of notice. And then what I hope is that, you know, each school will have their own way of how they're going to document how the kids sign, but it would be nice to have a display here at the ESC of, you know, from all the various schools. And so we're excited about it, and very grateful to our community partners and our national partners in this endeavor.
You don't happen to have the pledge with you, do you, or in front of you, or nearby? Because I don't know the Kate, have you ever read the pledge?
I don't have it in front of me, but we can
Okay.
bring it.
Okay. Or if you could email it to all of us. I mean, essentially, we're not going to use guns to solve conflict. And it's really, I mean, it's powerful, and it's just really powerful. And then, are we going to do art stuff? Because I remember one year,
All
it was
kinds of
some of the art
activities.
projects were really amazing when I went to different elementary schools. Yeah. Cool.
All kinds of
Right.
activities, so we're working with curriculum and instruction.
Okay, terrific. Next item, and this goes right in line with what Ms. Cashman was talking about, the election legislative review. And so there's the, obviously, the resolution that we put forward, but I wanted to ask as well, and for anyone that read the letters to the editor today, no, I'm not trying to suppress the vote. Okay? Let me make that very, very clear. Not trying to suppress the vote. Just doing exactly what Ms. Cashman said. We believe that the Constitution is pretty clear. We're not supposed to use district money, classroom money, on elections, especially on elections that have nothing to do with us and paying for elections around the state. So there's that. So let's make that really clear. When are we working on, or the legislative breakfast, or legislative priorities? What are our thoughts on that this year, since it's already getting to be the end of September?
So we've been working with Linda Siegel. Jeff, did you want to, do you have we don't have a date yet, have we, that we haven't set, but we are looking at perhaps meeting, not here like we normally do, but perhaps at a site has been a recommendation. But go ahead.
Board President Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent. We are working with Linda Siegel, looking at a date in October, well ahead of the legislative session, and at a school site instead of at the district offices here. And that's where we are right now. She's working with some people on her end to nail down probably the best date to do that.
Why, if this is, so basically we'd be discussing our legislative agenda, right? As a district. Why would we need to do that as a school, at a school site, if the board's going to be there as opposed to here? And I say that because of the expense of going to a school site. I mean, we've done that before, and when we've done that, virtually no one from the public has shown up. And it's expensive and extremely consuming to move a board meeting to a school site. So I'm curious as to
It's not a board meeting.
well, what I'm asking for is like either a study session or something relative to, with the board, what's our
Oh, okay, so we're talking about two different
Okay.
things. You started off with are we having the legislative breakfast? That's
Why
what
did-
we,
okay.
that's what we were responding to. In terms of us having it on the agenda to discuss what your items are, would be here, it wouldn't be at a.
Okay, I don't recall saying the legislative breakfast at that point. I was just saying the legislative review. So I'd like to have a breakfast at some point, and sure.
It may or may not, that was a suggestion from our lobbyists that they thought that might be a good idea. And so I'll have to find out why. Maybe it could be around capital outlay for something that we may identify. I know that if there are any other enhancements around security, then being at a site might be a good thing. So we're still playing that by ear. That's not cast in concrete. I apologize, I didn't.
That's okay.
There wasn't a break in your stream of consciousness, so I didn't know you had moved on to us meeting. No, that would be here. That would not be at a site.
And are we going to have a study session prior? I mean,
I'm not sure it would be a study session. We could probably discuss it in a board meeting.
Where I would almost recommend that it be a study session, so that because there's more give and take and it's a less formal setting, and if there are items that we feel are very important to take to the legislature this year, versus, and, you know, in addition to or other than.
So we're just looking at the dates and what we have left before, if we do it in October. And so, and we're trying to stay away from two study sessions. So we could combine it with a study session if you'd like. You know, we have.
It can be. You know what it is, more than
Mm-hmm.
anything? I don't want it to be the end of October, early November, and we're going into a session without a plan.
It won't be.
Okay. It's,
It
and I
won't
want
be.
the board to have the
We'll bring
opportunity
it.
to.
We'll make sure that we talk about what we think are some of the issues. I'm going to tell you the major issue this legislative session, quite frankly, is going to be the sufficiency lawsuit. I mean, that is going to take the oxygen out of the room, and I can't imagine that there's going to be other issues that people are really going to want to focus on. And so the Center on Law and Poverty issued the platform for that today. I'm sending you the press release. It has the links, and so we could go over those. And I can tell you from a 30,000-foot view what the 5 major things are that appear to have consensus, not only from the center, but various other educational stakeholders that are trying to influence the legislature on this issue.
Ms. Cashman?
I think it's just important to remind the public, first of all, the decision may be appealed. So, I mean, I've done a little bit of research, and they usually say by the time you have a lawsuit like this to the time money is in schools could be a 10-year process between all the legalities. But I also want, I mean, I sometimes talk with people. This isn't money dropping from the skies that everybody's going to be able to use it for whatever they want to do. It's very targeted money to address some of the things that the judge found. So we're not going to be able to say, oh, look, and now we can do this and we can do that, and we can, it's very targeted money. So just be cautious, you know, that everybody, I mean, because it's, you know, we don't even know how much money it might be, but I know loads of people have got their wish list, and just want to rein in our expectations a little bit on what we might see for our school district.
So what I do want to tell you is that there is $1.2 billion in new revenue, and the estimate, I just want to tell you what is being discussed at meetings that I've been at with the legislature. So anywhere between 340 up that people have discussed will be probably moving in that direction towards education. There are some common themes that fit with the lawsuit that there is agreement about, and that's what I would like to share with you, hopefully soon.
Well, on that, and this is why it really troubles me that no one has used recurring and non-recurring in any of their discussions. The $1.2 billion is from increased revenue from gas and oil, right? Right. Right. No, I know all that, but the thing is, it's like, let's hone this down to our family budget. Yeah, we think we're going to have a good year next year, and you know what? We think we're going to have a really good next 3 or 4 years, but we don't know. So if you're a family, you're not spending all of it right away, right? You're planning, and so my biggest concern is that I don't hear them using the words recurring and non-recurring, and because anything could happen relative to the energy market, and we've seen it happen so many times in this state. The whole idea that we're thinking like, woo, we have 1.2 billion is very scary to me. And it was very scary to John Arthur Smith. I read, you know, we're in agreement here. It's like people are coming to him saying, you know, open your checkbook. This is what I need. And that's not the way strategic planning works. They could learn a lot from checking out how we do our budget. But anyway, that having been said, so anything else on election legislative agenda review? Any thoughts on any of that? Ms. Cashman?
I think at some point in time, though, the board needs to discuss what are we doing about this upcoming election, and what are we doing for the ETN. But we need to formalize whatever approach the board is going to take, and I think maybe that's a good thing during the board retreat, but we need to really grapple with that, so we can know, are we going out for an election in February, or not?
I also want to clarify on that particular point that my issue, we all have different issues around the election. Mine is not so much that there's lots of people voting for a bunch of different issues. Mine are twofold. One is the cost of the election. The second is that for ETN, we will have a 1-year funding gap if we have to wait till November. That's my major concern, and I am concerned that that second point has been lost. I think that what I hear, it mostly is that they have to come up with a way to help maybe fund the election and our costs, but what isn't being addressed for school districts, and we're all at different places. It looks like after ETN we skip a year, and it looks like we could get on cycle. But for ETN, we'd have a 1-year funding gap. So if we can't fund for that, there'll be personnel that will be lost. It will be a real interruption in what we're doing around that program.
And I guess one of the things I was thinking of is after ETN, because of that year delay, but we also have HB 33 and SB 9. Can we go ahead because those are, again, are taxes? Can we go and get voters to approve them early because it's going to be a year? And I don't know legally if we can do that. So we need to, we really need a lot of discussion on this.
I need to clarify, and we need to go back and look at it, but I think the way the gap turns out, not funding gap, so let me use a different word. When the elections are scheduled, I think we get on cycle. I think it mainly affects ETN, but we can go back and look. But I believe that we can easily get on cycle. With ETN, we can't because of the timing of it. But it seems like that we have a year off, and then our next election, I can't remember, was it HB 33 or SB 9? But I think that where we're at, we would not see the same kind of funding gap that we are for ETN.
But I guess from how I read the law, we probably will, because even if our voters pass it in November, because of the way the county works the tax bills, those won't be on until the following November's taxes. So I think we just need to be looking at that to make sure, and if that's the case, can we ask early so we can get on cycle?
But then with that, we could easily do a mail ballot, not easily, but expensively and, everything in February. But then would we be committing to every other February doing a mail ballot? So we have to make that decision pretty darn soon. Okay. Ms. Noble.
So do we have a plan to dig into this? Because I think we've talked about this a few times, and to my knowledge, we don't have it scheduled, and I completely agree with Vice President Cashman and would like to not, we keep sort of doing little bits and pieces here, but I think we need to do this in a considered way.
Well, wouldn't it make sense? Okay, the legislature meets, the second Tuesday or whatever, the day after Martin Luther King Day in January, right? Then it's a 60-day session. So they're going to go to the middle of March, right?
So what,
It's like just right?
Yes, but
Okay.
there's a plan to do this like very early.
But
with
that
an
won't give
emergency
us
clause.
time. So
Yes,
we
it
can
could.
actually, even if they've decided in the first week, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, I didn't mean to be disrespectful, but it's like they're not on our clock, I don't think. And so we can decide in the next couple of weeks, we are doing a mail ballot for ETN in February or not. But I'm saying rather than wait for the legislature, because it might come too late to us. So then I would say that we should decide to do a mail ballot sooner rather than later so that all those different wheels can be set in motion. Doesn't that make sense rather than wait to January to find out what's next?
I think that does make sense to have a contingency plan to do it, but if there is a fix, then you wouldn't have to pull the trigger, or if they're going to pay for it or any other thing, we would be in a good position with that. Lisa, do you have any? think.
And while she's getting up there,
maybe-
wouldn't be we already pulling the trigger? Because if the election's going to be, if the mail is going to be the first trigger, first Tuesday in February, that's legislature only being in for 2 weeks.
And I believe we have to get to the county clerk at least 30 days, and maybe even earlier than that. Can't remember, 30 or 60 days.
It's like middle
But
December.
we have to publish those documents to the county clerk. So we really need to figure out what we're doing as, you know,
We'll bring a proposal to you. Lisa, was there anything else you needed to add?
Board President Carrillo, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, that captures most of it. I think that what would need to happen in mid-November is the board would have to agree to and sign a resolution to issue the bonds. And so that is an accelerated timeline. So you'd have to commit to the cost of the preparation of that resolution.
Yeah, no, I remember saying those as well. So would you then, I think we'd all agree, can we please ask the superintendent and staff to back map a timeline that if we're going to do a mail ballot election where everything's got to be returned by, how does that, I've never done, in my life, anywhere I've lived, done mail. So does that mean that everything has to be postmarked by the first Tuesday in February, or has to be received by the county clerk by then?
Board President Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, from memory, without looking at notes, I believe that we could have a springtime election. It doesn't have to be February per se. I think that possibly if we have it by May, we can still get the county to issue the property tax bills in a timely manner.
So that we don't have a funding gap.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
So then if you could come to us with the drop dead date for the latest we could have it, and then what, back mapping it, what we would need to do. Ms. Noble.
I'm hoping we can do this in a comprehensive way in a proposal, because bonds are a big deal, and that is my concern. We also have board member elections. There are other things that we need to grapple with around this election, and I think that there are a number if-then scenarios that maybe need to work through.
On the
Those are
board,
November.
I think the board we don't have an option. I think that
This
is November.
Not this, the following.
November 19th. Is my understanding right? Ms. Sullivan?
Board President Carrillo and Superintendent Garcia, I believe that's correct.
Okay. Ms. Cashman.
Not November 19th, November 2019.
I mean 18, I apologize. 18.
19.
No,
19.
Didn't I say?
Well, you said November 19th, and I
Oh,
thought it
I
can't be.
meant 2019.
Yeah,
First Tuesday in
2019.
November 2019. Okay. Okay, terrific. Yeah, of
Clarify?
course.
I just would like it all mapped out, and maybe not from memory, and maybe, but with some certainty around the legalities of what is said and what our options are, if any. And
promise.
And the deadlines and back mapping and whatever it is, all the things.
All the things.
Is it a stretch to have that by October 2nd, or no?
No, it's not a stretch at all.
Okay, that'd be great to have it by then.
We've been on this, we've been working on it, and actually, we do know, Ms. Noble, that it is, we have met on this, and it is May. I can't tell you if it's May 1st or May 31st, but it was back mapped to when we have to have it done for the county clerk and have everything approved. But we will have, it could be any election in terms of having it certified by the county. But for ETN, but not members, and that we know for a fact. But we will get you exact dates and have it all back mapped. And we'll provide the citations for you as well, so you can have them.
And I guess it would be worth going to Secretary Toulouse Oliver. She mentioned at the law conference that she said, districts, we might help you out with funding this gap. So if there's money available from the state, we want some dollars.
We met with her, we asked, and she said she is sympathetic, right? But it's really up to the legislature to allocate. Was that your understanding, Ms. Sullivan?
Yes. Board Member Cashman, or Vice President Cashman, I think she said that the local election fund was very, very underfunded overall for all. And so it's going to be something that will have to be discussed by the legislature.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda under board discussion is the ECO rebranding. So I put this here because as we're planning ECO, Early College Opportunity, Applied Sciences, I don't know what the whole name is. It's 21st Century Applied Sciences Program at Santa Fe. It's very, very long. But anyway, the reason I have this here is because we're doing a lot of planning around program and around building and around what we're going to do on the site. And one of the things that has become just abundantly clear to me when I was on CRC, but as well just being in the community, is that no one knows what ECO means. And I'm saying that as obviously there are some people, but a majority of people have no idea what ECO is, what the acronym stands for. Many people say ECHO instead of ECO. And then when they do find out, oh yeah, it's our Early College Opportunity High School, the first thing that comes to mind is like it's a college prep school. And that's not what it is. The idea is it's a dual credit program. So because of the lack of awareness, the ambiguity about the name and the branding, my sense is that we should start having the discussion of rebranding the school. Not the purpose, we know what we want it to do, but coming up with something that says what the school is. And even people that I know that teach at the school think that VOTEC should be somewhere in the name of the school, because that's what it is. It's 21st century VOTEC. And where in maybe the 80s and 90s, that was a word that people didn't want to use anymore because we wanted to just make the banks even richer and track everyone off to college and get lots of loans. The name VOTEC all over the country kind of started to disappear. But it's, you know, in having a career opportunity programs with certifications and everything, that is what we're doing. So, I mean, what are your thoughts? Because this is not going to be generated from the CRC. And even that night when I asked people in the meeting how many of you, and all the hands went up, and that they didn't know what ECO was, right? And so, but I'm curious as to what the rest of the board thoughts are, because we're the ones that will make that decision as to if we want it rebranded and how we want it rebranded. Ms. Cashman.
I guess I would ask the superintendent, does she have any recommendations on, I mean, I know how I personally feel. I'm always saying early college opportunity because I do get it. Is it ECO or ECHO? And I sit there for a minute to try to think about it. But do you have any recommendations?
So Mr. President, members of the board, career technical education is the 21st century term, right? Because it is about kids getting certifications and micro-credentialing and whatnot, which was somewhat different, I think, and maybe it happened to some degree under VOTEC, but that is just the term that is used, just like if we used a different term for language arts or whatnot. It is career technical ed. All the funding, career from Carl Perkins, everything is CTE. So I just want to say that the career technical ed is the term. With that said, you know, my own personal thought about it, we were talking about it as a staff, that I would have a name that doesn't even describe what it is, you know, aspire or whatever. I'm just throwing up words out there. But so I asked Assistant Superintendent Gephardt and also Dr. Lomax about whether or not we had to have early college high school in the name, because there is special funding for early college high schools, and I think we found out that we do not, right? Does not have to be in the name. But I did ask Assistant Superintendent Gephardt to talk to the staff a little bit about their thoughts. And do you want to share just some initial feedback that you received?
As a board president, Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, I did reach out to the staff, and they just about everybody emailed back. There was one individual that thought vocational technical high school might be a good name for it in some way, whether it's Santa Fe or however you want to say it. But overwhelmingly, they didn't want to lose the whole idea of this being an early college. Right now, what we're doing is we're providing students who may be underrepresented in higher ed an opportunity at college, college credits that lead to certifications, that through college and career advisement leads to maybe the opportunities for associate degrees and maybe even the idea of going on for a bachelor's degree. And so overwhelmingly, they really like the idea of keeping early college in the name. But there was one individual that did say VOTEC would be a good idea as well.
All right. Ms. Noble.
So I guess I think if we were going to rebrand, it's better sooner rather than later. I do think that there is getting more and more recognition in the community about ECO is the name. A branding exercise could also, you know, it could be early college, it can be early career. We could ask our students and our teachers to come up with a million different versions of the acronym that we could use. VOTEC had some very negative connotations once upon a time. I think that is wearing off now somewhat, that we're understanding that vocational education is important. I guess I'd be reluctant, having attended Santa Fe High when it was VOTEC, and there's a lot of baggage around that. There was also a whole community effort with Bobby Gutierrez as superintendent and Dr. Mel Morgan around CTEC, and it was probably 10 or 12 years ago now, but I participated in my role of city economic development. There were a huge number of community hours spent in a project that was, I believe, CTEC, or maybe it was an E, anyway, Career and Technical Education Center. There are still documents probably in my garage somewhere relating to that. And that was, this is one editorial view of that time, but there was a lot of time and energy spent from this community into that project, which didn't seem to go anywhere at all. And personally, I had some frustration at the number of hours that were spent in that sort of went nowhere, so I would be reluctant around anything with that. And I do think, as a board, if we feel strongly about rebranding a school, we can ask for that, but I think that the work of doing that rebranding is best done elsewhere, and I think the district has had some good history of having contests with students naming things, so if we wanted to go that road, but I do also put a lot of store in what the staff says, and if they feel that the early college concept is important, I weigh that very heavily. And personally, my sense is I started hearing people this summer talk more about ECO, and I think that it is getting a little more traction. You know, some of these things just take time. So I don't feel particularly strongly about branding or rebranding, but I think we could have some fun even with the ECO letters as they exist now.
Ms. Cashman?
I know you, I don't believe you were on the board when we accepted this name, but the name did come from community input and student input and teacher input, so now if we're going to change it, you know, then we're saying, well, we really didn't like your input. I don't know, but and I understand VOTEC. I've never had a problem with VOTEC, but it does have a bad connotation across the country. I think it's changed now, but most of them are calling themselves CTEC instead of VOTEC now.
I actually like CTEC. I mean, I remember that vaguely when that was all happening. And I like VOTEC a lot. And actually, it was teachers that liked VOTEC because they wanted to reclaim the dignity of VOTEC. And I know what happened years ago. It was like, oh, those are the kids that can't make it in high school. You know, and it's a horrible way to have stereotyped this entire group of people that are going into trades. But I think reclaiming that name, and maybe CTEC is the compromise of reclaiming it.
Well, you know, Dr. Lomax has done this work for a long time. It really is, when you're talking, you know, wherever you are nationally in education, that term VOTEC just isn't used anymore. It's career technical education. And so, and actually, Dr. Lomax led the Career Technical Education Bureau at the Public Ed Department. Do you want to just address that in terms of, is VOTEC coming in back in vogue? Maybe I've missed the boat.
And to also emphasize the overarching opportunities within a career technical accessibility. And there was a great deal of communication that had been shared from the national to each of the states. And in the service that I was honored to give at the national board level, we always contemplated and determined that communications that would underscore the importance of the vocational aspects, which are contextualized and applied and vocationally warranted for employment, workforce preparation, so on and so forth, are embedded in career technical education. So it's a simultaneous opportunity to do what we're all talking about: hands-on skills, access to dual credit, access to post-secondary educational opportunities that can lead not just to associates, but even beyond. It's a stepping stone into, doesn't have to be a four-year education, but if you want to change it into a four-year education, you've got a comprehensive umbrella. I'm sorry, but I feel very passionately about all things vocational, all things career technical, all things that are workforce and preparatory. So thank you. Any other questions?
No question, but the more I'm just even hearing the term used, CTEC, the more I'm liking it. It just rolls off, you know, hey, I go to CTEC. Great, we know what you're doing. You're gonna, you know, I think we should revitalize, look back on the work that was done with Bobby and Mel. And and possibly look at that. I mean, I still believe that it needs to be rebranded. I personally don't like the name, and I think it totally misrepresents what we're doing. And even if some of the kids want that there, they're gonna be gone in 3 years. So it's like we're the ones that are vested in doing something that's going to be the next 30 years.
But let's think about it. They are going to college. They are getting dual credit. And
CTEC's the same thing, though.
Well, career technical ed, we have career technical ed throughout the district. And CTEC, Career Technical Education Center, I mean, it's sort of like calling it a generic, and even ECO to me is a generic name, but that's what everybody picked. It's like we wouldn't call someplace high school. Or, you know what I'm saying? And so that's the part that, if I were going to say, yeah, rebrand ECO, is just that it is what it is. It's just, so, but people have seemed to understand it, and it is becoming more, even said correctly, because I was constantly having to say it's not ECO, it's ECO. And so it seems like it's catching on, but I get it. It is a generic term, but I would feel just the same if we called it career technical education place, you know, or school or whatnot. That describes the education.
Anything else under board discussion? Do either of you have anything? I need to look in my book really quick because I made some notes earlier. I don't think I do. No, I don't. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with the board, and you can say no, is I'm not sure what happened to our county representatives. Everyone knows where we are. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking, yeah, no, I'm so sorry. So we're going to move on now to the resolution. And my understanding is we were going to put the resolution on the PowerPoint as well. Is that correct? I'm sorry, Joseph. Can people see that? I can see that from here, so can people see that from where they're sitting? And if you need a copy of the resolution, there's copies up at the little table at the entry. So this is a first reading of the Strategic Housing Initiative. And let me get my copy out, sorry. And you'll recall, is she coming back? You'll recall that 2 weeks ago when I brought this up, the idea was bringing it up 2 weeks ago, giving everyone ample time to know that this was coming down the pike, and then giving everyone the resolution by Wednesday of last week, so they had plenty of time to read it, come up with questions, know that we had experts from the county, from finance, and from the philanthropic community and the project manager. So we had these people here to be able to address all of the issues related to this. And I know that Ms. Mayer brought up a great issue, and that could be handled in a feasibility study relative to if there was a lottery, making it open to more people than just first tier people coming in from out of state. And a lot of that can be determined through the feasibility study and where need is. So you have we're missing a board member right now because I want to go through this. But I would say that 3 years ago I met with Justin Green, who's here tonight, just informally because I had this idea around teacher housing. We talked about it, tossed it around, nothing happened. 2 years ago, kind of same thing. But then something really crystallized, and it crystallized when I met with you, Brian Skeel, who's here tonight. Is that why you're here? Was this item on the agenda? Just curious, because when we had lunch that day, or breakfast, or whatever it was, that's when the idea crystallized around what about using properties, not that we own that are in outlying areas, because Santa Fe Public Schools owns a number of properties, but what about using properties that already have school sites on them and having smaller compounds, if you will, adjacent. And then, then it was meeting with legal to make sure that this could happen. My kind of doing due diligence, if you will, to make sure that the project would have legs and could have legs, and it did. And so then working with Justin quite a bit on, and working with Joseph, having a meeting with the county, Joseph and a couple other people with the county. And then as well, which I'm very excited about, and he was out of town on the weekend, so it didn't come to me until later today. If you want to pass one down to Kate, this is for you, one for the record. Did you all receive, I sent you an email this afternoon, the letter from Alan Weber. So I'm going to read this because the public doesn't have this on the website. It's a letter of support from Mayor Weber. And as mayor, the issue that I most often asked, it says President Carrillo, as mayor, the issue that I most often asked about is education, and specifically the Santa Fe Public Schools. When asked, my answer is this: the city and the school district need to find ways to collaborate and cooperate in a wide variety of issues that touch the lives of our children, our students, our families, our teachers, and all of the people who make a difference in the quality of education in Santa Fe. The city needs to support Santa Fe Public Schools. Santa Fe Public Schools needs to support the city. Our jurisdictional responsibilities may be different, but our overreaching interests are the same: the well-being of our young people and their future. For that reason, I welcome the suggestion from President Carrillo and the school board that the school district is interested in exploring options for strategic housing. We need to be willing to consider innovative approaches that will make more affordable housing available in every part of the city. I encourage the school board to continue talking with the city, the county, and other institutions in Santa Fe that can contribute to creative and thoughtful ways to produce more housing options. I look forward to partnering with the school district on this and many other issues where we have shared values and shared interests. Mayor Alan Weber. And so, I mean, as you can see, I think we've built an amazing coalition with the county, with Santa Fe Community Foundation, because Juhi is here as well, and in coming up with ways to do this. And it's a long resolution, and I'm not going to read it because it's on the board. And is this on the website as well? So if people want to, it probably would be, since it was given to you Wednesday.
It would be with the materials that
Okay.
Alma posts every
Fantastic.
Friday.
So people watching, if you want to have a copy of this, you can do so by going to the website. But so now what I want to do is just work through the resolution. And in keeping with the idea that this is a first reading, the idea for tonight is to really use the experts that we have in the audience to craft or recraft or wordsmith language to meet concerns that you have. Kate, I received, and I had kept it, the resolution you came up with in May, but my thinking here is that this kind of really zeroes in specifically on maybe to start with a smaller compound of 8 to 12 units, getting the ball rolling. And then when this pilot is successful and when we start moving people in July of 2020, whether they be people from out of state or people from here, that this starts to serve as a model for the way the city and county and even school district can work together. And maybe other municipal workers, fire, police, other people that are also really kind of priced out of Santa Fe housing, but provide very, very valuable services to our community. But here it's about starting with teachers, and teachers specifically. And I know that in the resolution, I believe it's on line 31, where that we realize throughout the district, not only our teachers, but many others throughout the district, yes, they need increases in their wages as well. Obviously, we're hoping with perhaps a new administration that public education in general is going to see a boost in revenue that can then support the wage compression, that if we give teachers and principals a raise, we've got to give all the other raises as well, right? Admin and all of the other support staff. So if we want to just, I think it'd be very beneficial at this point, if you will, to have us go through the whereases like I think we did with the computer science initiative, just piece by piece, and see, are there concerns, are there questions. First, I'd like the staff that are here from the county and the Santa Fe Community Foundation to introduce themselves, and then their role in this, and perhaps their shared optimism, if that's the way that I can put it.
President Carrillo, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, my name is Joseph Montoya. I am the Executive Director for the Santa Fe County Housing Authority, and am also taking on all the responsibilities for all housing and economic development issues within the County of Santa Fe. And so we were very excited to hear this possible event proposal. Earlier in my career, I had the opportunity to be able to write this particular law that we will be able to use in order to lower the cost of land for possible developers, or however we want to do it in terms of making sure that we have appropriate housing for our teachers. And so this will be only the second time that this is even possibly brought up in terms of a school system taking an initiative to be able to do this kind of process. The city of Lovington and that local school board there actually had an initiative, but they never actually quite got the ground in order to, they were looking for single-family homes in one of their school systems. So we're very excited about this possibility. There's a lot of things to work out, but both the staff at Santa Fe County and the leadership, the political leadership of Santa Fe County is extremely excited about partnering up, including with the city. I think this can be a joint effort by everybody involved to make sure that our citizens have decent, affordable housing.
Thank you, Joseph. Justin, do you want to introduce yourself and say a few words?
Good morning, Mr. President, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, and board members. Hello. So my name is Justin Green. I work in the space between urban design and development and entrepreneurism. So I work on real estate development issues, and this is an issue near and dear to me that would be something to get our way through and figure out how to do this first successfully. And so this could be a proof of concept for partnering with the city, partnering with the county, working it beyond just teachers. And I think this is a great opportunity to start this. So I'm here to answer any questions if you'd like. Thanks.
Thanks. And thank you so much for your help in guiding me through an area that I wasn't familiar with at all, and then working on the resolution. And Juhi, do you want to just introduce yourself? You have to come down if you do. And because we had, Justin and I met with Juhi. Juhi is with the Santa Fe Community Foundation, because obviously, how do you fund this? And it was just, I mean, when Justin and Juhi were talking about all these things, I mean, it was just way over my head. All of the different tools and mechanisms that could be leveraged for a project of this sort. Ms. Juhi.
President Carrillo, Superintendent, and members of the board, I did not prepare a formal statement.
Right.
I'm Juhi Rand with the Santa Fe Community Foundation. Just wanted to share that when the Community Foundation had series of community conversations last year, every single conversation housing came up with as a key issue that affects equity and possibly every area of impact that we try to address as a funder. So we have actually decided to prioritize housing as a key issue we will focus on and actually set aside some funding. We are working with some other foundations to create a collaborative funding around housing, and also we'll be allocating a lot of impact investing dollars, which uses our endowment to invest in community projects that has impact as well as financial returns. So we are as a foundation putting more resources into housing. I did meet with President Carrillo and Justin. I think the resolution that's proposed is an exciting and interesting option. It does not address a lot of housing that's needed, but it does apply what the school already has as an asset, and addresses both housing for teachers and your need to recruit and retain quality teachers at the schools. So I think it's a good option. It does not replace the need to collaborate broadly with other community stakeholders, including the city and other investors in the community, so I hope that still continues. We don't have a formal commitment of funding, but we are open and interested in discussing more.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So as you can, I'd like to say we established this small brain trust of people who are so knowledgeable and passionate about this issue to be able to pilot. And that's what this is. It's a pilot. Just as Juhi said, this does not touch the scope of the challenge in Santa Fe County in northern New Mexico. What it does is it takes off a bite, and it says, hey, if we can make this work, or when we make this work, now we have this model. So I would I don't want to read this, but I'd like us to go through concerns you have, changes in language. Obviously my hope is that at least 2 of us, hopefully 3 tonight, pass or move this forward as a first reading, so then we can fine tune it, come back in 2 weeks. And then it's very important to acknowledge as well, the county's working on a concurrent track. Okay, so after we do a first reading for the resolution, they're doing a first reading, and Joseph can tell you more about that, on theirs. And then we come back with our second and final, and then they have that in advance so they can tweak their second and final, and then all of a sudden, boom, we start our feasibility study, and we get the ball rolling. And for anyone that's lived in Santa Fe, I've lived here only 27 years, but for anyone that's lived in Santa Fe, getting the ball rolling is so hard. So if we can get past this hurdle and all of us work together to craft something that we know is really important for our teachers in our community, that would just be so exciting. So now I'll just open it up to questions from members. Yes, Ms. Cashman.
So before, just so we have some facts on the table, and I asked the superintendent ahead of time, can you tell me what, on average, how many Tier 1 teachers on average, how many Tier 1 teachers we have, or Level 1 teachers we have, and does that include teachers that come from like Spain and Mexico, that they're here for a short time?
So we have 100, Board President Carrillo and Vice President Cashman, 197 Tier 1 teachers. In terms of coming from other countries, international teachers are typically level 3 and 2. International teachers through the PED program require a minimum of 3 years and a master's degree.
Thank you.
Any additional, I mean, Maureen, you're the only, I'm only allowed to talk
Yeah.
to one board member because of the Open
Right,
Meetings Act,
okay,
right? So
so-
Maureen's the
so-
one I've talked with. And so if you look at line 31, if we were to go to the next slide, for people that need to read it up there, I imagine everyone has a copy. But if you look at line 31, I mean, I put that paragraph in specifically for you, Ms. Cashman, because I agree with you. I mean, I completely agree. But I just want to reemphasize, this is taking a small bite of the apple initially.
I guess, and I know Board Member Noble knows how I feel on when she came in May on her proposal on talking about the housing crisis in Santa Fe. I believe we do have a housing crisis. I'm not ignoring that. However, I really believe this is something that the County Commission and the City Council need to address, and not Santa Fe Public Schools. We need to really be focusing on education first. And I know that sounds, and I know I'm at odds with the union on this also, but I look at all my teachers, and I have, and you know, and I sort of say they're all my teachers, they're all our teachers. We have level 3 teachers that are also struggling with housing because they may have a sick child, a sick parent, student loans that they're trying to pay off. And so I'm not sure this is, I guess I'm looking at, we're taking one class of teachers, our tier 1 or our level 1, whatever we want to call them, and we're giving them a benefit potentially that we're not providing our other teachers and our staff. And so I have a problem with that, because I would think if I was, even in a lottery, I won this reduced housing unit, and so I'm paying below market rent, then I would be very happy. But my colleague that's sitting 2 classrooms down would not be so happy, and I think they would be saying to me as a school board member, are you going to give me the $200 or $300 extra a month that you're subsidizing this teacher? So I have a problem with this, and I said that to Board Member Noble when she brought this up in May also, that I don't think this, I'm more than willing to collaborate with the city and the county, coming up with the proposal first and saying, well, this is how we envision it, but I have a problem for us to be taking the lead on it. First of all, I don't think our staff has the expertise in this, so we would have to contract out to hire people that can do it. I'm concerned with, are we being fair to all of our staff by giving some of the staff a reduced, even if we say, okay, we give you 1 year of sitting in reduced housing and you owe us I don't know how it's going to work, and you owe us 2 years of teaching in return for that, and then they say, sorry, I'm moving so-and-so because my spouse is moving there, or I decide I can get a better deal in Albuquerque because there are more apartment units. So I know we have property, and I would be concerned to be putting these units on our actual school sites. We have property that isn't a school site, but just putting it on our actual school sites, what happens if the teacher leaves in the middle of the year? Or I don't want to tell an individual how to behave. I want to tell them in the classroom, but when they leave and they go home at the end of the day, but if they're on my school site, I'm going to expect some different standards because I have kids. So I know there's a lot of excitement, but I do not support this at this point in time. I would rather have us as a school district focus on paying our teachers and our staff living wages, and I don't mean the living wage for Santa Fe, but real living wages. So we treat them as the professionals that they are, and also concentrate on the educational components that we're responsible for educating the kids. So I know this, and I know Brian and I have talked a lot about, you know, green homes and a lot of sustainability. There's a lot out there, and it's exciting, but I don't think as a school district we should be taking the lead on it. And I do believe that some school districts this is appropriate for. I remember when I started out teaching, the town I taught in didn't have one apartment complex at all. There wasn't any apartment complexes. So you either had to live 30 minutes out, or you had to find a room to rent in somebody's house. It was just that type of community, a rural community, and you know, you make it work. I know we've got teachers traveling. I know we have that, but I don't think this is going to retain our teachers, because I will tell you, in 2 years after you become and you move into Tier 2, you're going to still be faced the same problem with housing. The market rate is expensive here. It's a, you know, and so then we're going to have people that are saying, wait a minute, you subsidized me for a while and that was great, and you pulled the rug out for me, and you really didn't give me much more in income to make it worth it. So that's how I feel about it. I appreciate both Board Member Noble and President Carrillo's efforts into try to generate something like this, but this is not a resolution I'm willing to support. So that said, you know, I'll let you two talk about, you know, what you want to ask the experts from, but I do feel strongly about this.
But I think it's important to address your concerns, because you bring up very real concerns. So school site, that is just an idea, because we could have a school site where the school actually occupies only, you know, 8 or 9 acres of a site that's actually 18 acres. It's not the idea of having apartments right on top of a school, but we have an asset. And the thing that I mean, that's relative to the concern about the site. So what I'm hoping is, in the course of a conversation, right, that we can address concerns. If those concerns are addressed, we can address them in the language or otherwise, and we could recognize this is a study. So there's many cases where we don't have the answers, right? The funding pieces, not having the answers. I know that Joseph's going to speak to the how do you do this? Get the land from here to here. And the reason I think that we're taking the lead is because no one's taken the lead so far, but we have the asset, okay? And that's maybe why we are in this unique position to take the lead here. I want to emphasize that this is around a feasibility study, so that we even brought up the idea, and Justin can speak to it, with HomeWise. The idea is that someone's Tier 1, that this is not permanent housing. They're in this for no more than 3 years, unless our study determines that maybe it's 2 years. But it's 3 years, and that's such time. If we have a Tier 1 teacher, my understanding from being on the board for almost 8 years is that if they're not looking to be Tier 2 after 3 years, we're concerned. And then also, this can be the pipeline to home ownership by partnering with HomeWise. So during this time when they're having a possibly reduced housing payment, they're also working with HomeWise to say, okay, when my 3 years is up, let's get me in a house. And so that's a really exciting possibility for teachers as well. I mean, I know you're concerned about all teachers, but essentially, I have to emphasize again, this is a smaller bite, a pilot, before we can do everything for everybody. Ms. Noble, do you have any questions or concerns about the resolution as it's written, or?
Here's a question probably for Mr. Montoya. What would be different? I mean, I get that we're a school district and no other school districts have done this, but what would be different about what would be done in this feasibility study than has happened before in Santa Fe around affordable housing on public property?
Sure. President Carrillo, Member Noble. One of the issues is that the structural systems haven't been set up. We don't know what it is that you want. So we really have to get a lot of input in terms of the school system, in terms of what is it looking for, who does it really want to serve, what are the perimeters of what we need to do. That's the first thing. It's the programming issue. It's making sure that we know what it is we're trying to achieve through different policies. Just to be clear here, the county in this particular aspect is just the vehicle by which you're allowed to be able to lower the value of the land, or excuse me, you're able to actually lower the land price. All other kind of legislative issues that you have to take care of in terms of procurement and in terms of allowing land to be sold stays the same. This is just the ability to be able to provide some incentive to be able to provide units that the units would go down. Is that helpful?
And so, to unpack that a little bit, my understanding is the anti-donation clause, there are two mechanisms to get through that: affordable housing and economic development. And the mechanism that we would use would be affordable housing, obviously, in this case. What does the county resolution say? You said that there was a county resolution?
Sure, President Carrillo, Member Noble, we were waiting for this to go through. We have exchanged certain ideas. A lot of the preamble stuff is very similar. Really what we're offering to be able to do is work with the county, especially in those areas where the county doesn't have expertise in terms of development and design and finance, which we do actually have in-house in the county, and provide that expertise so that we can work together to see if there's a proposal that both entities can fix. Quite frankly, from the county side, it's a fairly easy issue. We would be adjusting our affordable housing plan, and then we'd be creating an ordinance very specifically for whatever lands that you feel you want to be able to use in this particular incident. And so it works just as the economic development plan, which you're well aware of in terms of the usage.
And so the ordinance would be just amended to add the properties?
President Carrillo, Member Noble, a specific ordinance would be created actually for this specific project. Now we could make it as a program. If there was a desire to do this time and time and time again, then we would create language that allows us to continuously do this. But for the beginning, it would just be, because there is nothing in either the city's plans or the county plans that contemplates specifically working with the school systems.
And the county's plan, because everything is, I believe, in the Santa Fe Public School District is in Santa Fe County, does it also cover, or is there another layer that would be needed within the city? Because ultimately, I think as a governmental district, we'd be permitted and that sort of thing by the state, correct?
President Carrillo, Member Noble, you're correct, actually. Everything that's owned right currently within the Santa Fe school system is within Santa Fe County, and everything within the city is also within Santa Fe City. So there wouldn't be any extra issues there. Permitting would be done by the state. The city wouldn't have authority, although we would want to work very closely with it in terms of entitlements, as you know, in terms of getting the appropriate zoning and the procedures. There's no reason for us not to work together very closely in order to make sure that we're all in agreement as government bodies and for this kind of project.
Mm-hmm. Because city zoning would apply, and any rezone, just as with the Alvord property, of any property would have to be approved by the city council with a process probably similar to what we went through to Alvord to do housing. So was the city involved? Did we talk at all with Alexandra Ladd, the city's housing director?
No, I've only spoken with Mayor Weber. This in the initial phase of
what? Did you speak with him?
Yes, several times.
Okay.
And that's how I have this letter, because I asked for it. Because I really want to partner with the city, and I want, when it's time for zoning changes or variances or whatever it might be, since we all recognize the need here, there's no reason for anybody to say, you know, where people want to take, I don't know, want to mucky up the waters just because they can. So the idea here was to speak with Mayor Weber and just to say, hey, if we move this forward with the county, we just want to make sure that we're working with the city as well, because this benefits all of us. And this pilot can ultimately benefit the police department. I mean, right now, let's face it, they're paying $10 less an hour and people are fleeing. Imagine if housing could be a piece of recruiting a police force. So, yes, talk to the city. Sorry, long answer, short question.
So, another question here, which is that it says that there will be no cost to the district. And I guess I want to ask the superintendent, I mean, and I keep hearing the words that this is a feasibility study. In my experience, which was to oversee the city of Santa Fe's community development department for a number of years, which included affordable housing, a feasibility study often costs money, and I hear that there'll be technical assistance from the county, but I guess it doesn't ring correct in my gut that there would be no cost to this.
The idea is to end up having it be cost neutral to the district, and that's why Justin and I met with Shuhi and the foundation, was to explore where seed money could come from. Because yes, we know that obviously there's an expense in time. Okay, if the facility's in operation, people put time into this. Time is money. Okay, and there are going to need to be specialists. There is going to need to be a project manager, different people that we need help from that need to be paid as professionals. And so the idea was, in meeting with the foundation, identifying community partners within the foundation that we could go to have the seed money so that it offsets any time and or contract expenses for this.
And why 12 units? It's very specific, 12 units with the goal of having homes available in under 24 months and ready for occupancy. That makes me less uncomfortable because it's a goal, but it's very specific about the number of units here, and we haven't even...
It's a great question, and then Justin will speak to that. Initially, I felt like a small apartment building, like 50 units. But I also, a person who we met with very early on was a woman named Felicia who manages Vizcaya, which is a large, has two very large complexes. And Justin, if you want to speak to it, the idea was, I mean, immediately they were like, Steve, start small. You don't need to start with 50. You don't even know if you could fill 50. You need a study to see what your need is. And so the idea was 8 to 10. My personal preference is that they're more casita-like, maybe duplexes, that there's a small gym in I'm totally attached to this thing, as you can tell, that there's the idea of a small gym in community space for the teachers and friends and to have a good time, right? It's not, I don't want it to look like Section 8 housing, you know, that's put up at the last minute by the government. I want it to be a really wonderful place for people to live. Justin.
So thank you, Mr. President, Member Noble. So the concept is a proof of concept to be as contextual as possible. The feasibility study will address whether 12 is the right opportunity, both in terms of the financing and the siting and the demand. If we discover that there's a much larger demand than 12, then the feasibility study would direct us to probably plan bigger. And if it said that 6 would do the job just perfectly to get it off the ground, and there's a perfect site for it, when the stars align, that we will work towards making something happen on the ground.
When you speak of demand, what do you mean?
So part of the feasibility study would be going to some of the staff of the Tier 1 teachers and finding out if this is something that would be attractive to them. So to understand if we build it, will they come? Is this something that can be actually functionally useful to HR and recruiting? If our study says that this is not what they would want, then that shuts us down very quickly. If this is something that seems very attractive and that there's 30 people that would sign up, and that but not having this, they go to Lubbock or to Albuquerque, that if you can provide this, that you would have better recruits, then there's a higher demand than we think. So we want to start with something feasible, not too large. A ballpark budget amount of under $2 million was initially targeted as a starting point. But that has to do, again, with funding availability and the right property and entitlements and so on.
Can I ask you a question? Who would be operating these units?
Mr. President and Vice President, so that is part of the feasibility study. You as a school district already have facilities management people, and It could be managed through a facilities manager or property manager that works internally, and once this gets big enough, if it gets big enough, and there's multiple complexes across and multiple units, this could be turned over to a management company.
And let me ask you another question. So we have these units, and we're not quite sure how many we need, but my thought went away. I'll get back to it, because I had a question I wanted to ask you, but it was 3 thoughts ahead.
Have you seen the resolution I drafted in May?
I did, yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. And, you know, so I ran for mayor, in case anybody didn't know that. And it was a very intensive 6 months on the campaign trail, and housing was by far the #1 issue. It is, in my view, the most critical issue for this community to address. It is the prospect or the product of a number of things, including large economic forces that we went into a recession as a result, in essence, of a mortgage bubble that was fueled by some pretty irresponsible behavior on Wall Street. If anybody hasn't read The Big Short, oh my goodness, it's fascinating. I guess I don't think this is ready. I don't like 12. I mean, the reason that I wrote the resolution as I wrote it in May was to get this conversation going. And, you know, there's certain language in it when I look back at it that says, you know, work with housing partners in the community to identify and quantify housing barriers for family in the Santa Fe public school system. I get that that may be part of the feasibility study, but it's phrased very differently. What is the barrier to housing? And right now it's really, really acute, because we have had 10 years of pent-up demand because nobody built anything for 10 years. We have had a great deal of NIMBYism because nobody wants affordable housing anywhere near them. We have had I guess there's not much way to put it other than a failure of a variety of bodies to lead on this. And in my view, there is a level of priorities, and what we could use most of all to address the housing shortage in Santa Fe is an accessory dwelling unit ordinance. We need people to build casitas. We need it in a distributed way all over town. I would like to see that, which I believe is also something that is mentioned in this resolution, and a lot of that I drafted that we didn't really consider in May, partly because of the response that was received from this board. And looking at a program to build affordable housing on public land, I think should be part of that. And President Carrillo, I don't know if you're aware of the Arts and Creativity Center planning for a 60, 70 units?
60, I think it was.
On the city's Seiler Yard, there's a 5-acre allocation. That is now up. There is a lot of discussion now as to whether the city needs to change track on that. There's been hundreds of thousands of dollars plowed into design and architectural work around that. It is meant to be affordable housing. To my understanding of the definition of creative, it would include teachers. Is that your understanding, that teachers would?
I don't actually know that.
Okay,
yeah,
because there has been.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
President Carrillo, Member Noble, it would include everybody. It's a fair housing issue. You can't not have anybody in there.
The discrimination.
Yes, it's discrimination. And to be clear, it's income-based, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the very lowest tier of people you had with two family members, only one working, may be able to get in that particular product. It's a
because it's 0
it's
to
a federal
30
low-income housing tax credit.
Portion of it would be 0 to 30% of AMI, and then there are other proportions too, I believe.
President Carrillo, Member Noble, no. So actually, tax credits are designed for 60% of median income. And so you can go a little below or a little bit above relative to the amount of subsidies that you have.
Yeah. So, and that the concept is that it would include community amenities to support something greater than just people living in the same place, that there would be studios, that there would be potentially a maker space, that there would be other things as well as common space. And a lot has been conceived around that. And truly, I hope that it continues to move forward and that the city stays the course on doing that development, but it is now a question. And, you know, I think a feasibility study, I guess I don't see that a working group with district staff is going to add a great deal to understanding what might be good on our property. When I first joined the board, one of the first conversations I have, and I believe I shared this with you, President Correa, was about the ball fields for BF Young, which is actually flanked by housing. It's on Sierra Vista and is a perfectly good plot because it would be incredibly consistent with development there, and that was identified by Gino Zamora, whom of course used to work at the city as the city attorney and oversee the affordable housing stuff, that a number of units could go there without having the school site issue that would be consistent with the other residences in the area. And I guess, you know, I don't know, I do know that we need, as a school board, to work with the county and the city. I think we need a lot of solutions, and using our land is one. I think we should be working on identifying the barriers and issues for our staff. I think we should be pressuring on things like an accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which is the big one. I mean, if there was one thing, if I were queen of the world and could wave my wand, that would be it, because that would, coupled with some lending by HomeWise, because not everybody can afford to just build a casita. And last time I talked with Mike Lofton, he had actually figured out a way to potentially lend for casitas to be built as accessory dwelling units. In some ways, I might be in favor of just a really targeted analysis of our property, some expression of will by the county and the city to, I think, address this crisis in conjunction, because you're right, we can bring assets to the table. The school district has property, and some of it might be very viable for housing. But I don't think we should be creating a group that is going to take a bunch of district time to do something that is not in their area of expertise. I don't think we should be specifying the number of units, and I think we need to get real clear around the programming issues that we as a district are trying to address, because current district demand, I mean, wow, there are ways to get our hands around what that would be, but that's actually a kind of hard thing to quantify. And I think we need to think about a lottery system might be a way to do this, but could we also, let's say, partner with a Grow Our Own program so that we are bringing up people with loyalty and roots in this community, and, you know, beware of the unintended consequences. If this is about attracting teachers from other places, I agree with Vice President Cashman that they might move on, and that the continuum of housing, which you say, you know, could be worked on. I think that's what we need to think about. But all over, people are having issues around housing, and it's not just in Tier 1. This is a broad and deep and accelerating problem as long as, you know, units aren't getting built. And there are some moving forward through the Planning Commission. You know, we're getting a bit of a logjam out there with development. But I guess I see that there's a couple of different things wrapped up in here, and I hoped that you would look seriously at what I had written, which does address things in a more systemic way, and specifically asks that the city, which most of our properties are within, take action to address what is a historic and severe housing crisis. And truly, we can bring our assets to the table, but I think we need to think about if we can work with the city and the commitment to do so. A resolution is probably a good mechanism for that. In this, it strikes me there are at least a couple things. One is there a collaborative working group, to use a community foundation term, of some description to work on housing that builds the will to do this? And another is, are we going to do a feasibility assessment around our property, and what are the goals and criteria under which we are sending forth that feasibility study into the world, because that will determine how much it costs, including, demand assessments, as well as property analysis, which would include the existing zoning. A lot of the things that are here would need to be done. Specifically, I'm looking in the numbers of the be it further resolved, but regulatory environment, legal and entitlement processes, including those related to the schools, state affordable housing, local building codes, federal tax incentives, and other opportunities. I mean, to me, those need to be done by a very focused expert and not by a working group that is building public will to move something forward to address what is a historic housing crisis in our city. So, I've looked back at my resolution, which I do think has some important points in it. I appreciate a lot of the work that has gone into some of the specifics needed here, but I think we need to get really clear on what our first step is and what it will cost. So I would like to see us unpack some of this and think about how we do the work so that it is durable for the future. So if it's an assessment of our property, it's maybe including potential uses, as we heard the NEA president, Grace Mayer, say earlier tonight, of childcare, that sort of thing. That we, and part of the resolution that I wrote is also looking at the planning issue, because, and it was brought on by the fact that the reason we are having to look at closing schools is in part a failure of planning in our community, and we are seeing a bifurcation of residences, of populations in a really extreme way that we are having to deal with sort of the end of when we have schools that don't have, and we have school districts, or zones rather, that don't have kids in them anymore. And so I guess I would like to see us understand a smart sequencing of how we are working on addressing the housing issue, meeting the demands and identifying the barriers for our workforce, and working with the other governmental agencies to collaborate and deal with some of the systemic problems, including trying to get some planning going so we have some clear intention, and that's a word I think I used a couple times in here, around where our community is going and if we are going to work on the cost of housing for people that work here as governmental bodies and rebalancing some of the bifurcating forces in our community that are very clear right now, particularly in the housing market. So, and I think it's really important, actually, that we hear from Secretary Garcia, Rudy, on this, because he does understand the partnership with the county, I think, very well, and has seen both of the schools and the county from the inside. And so I guess I would prefer to table this and wait until we have Rudy to weigh in, and perhaps think about how we can sort of separate some of our goals between studying our property, working with other governments, and maybe even a third, but I think it sort of permeates both things, which is meeting the needs of our workforce and families in the district, because we are in a very real place where there are fewer kids all over the place in Santa Fe. So those are my thoughts.
I would say you just made the case for why your housing initiative didn't go forward, because it was so broad and it included directions to the city and the county that we can't direct them to do. And that we're hold on, I'm going to talk, I'm speaking now. And that, I mean, essentially, we're the Santa Fe Public Schools. It is not within our purview, nor within our budget, to solve the housing crisis for the city. And I wish you're texting, and I just wish you'd pay attention to me the way I did to you. And the, do you have your copy? And I'll give you the hard copy here. The, and I think that's what, when the board received this, it was so broad. Whereas what I've tried to do is be really, no, it was Kate. Because I want you to have a hard copy in front of you. Not in mine. So, I mean, I actually think that in what you were saying, you make the case for this. You make the case for saying, okay, we need to have a study to find out why 12 units. I'm not married to 12, I'm not married to 8, I'm not married to 20. I'm married to finding out what is the right number. And finding the right number is through a feasibility study. Finding the right number is saying, okay, what is manageable in terms of our working with partners? Is $2 million? 10 million? No, 10 is off the table. And even though 10 might house more people, it's like the feasibility might determine, it's like, yes, even though the need was determined to house more people, 10 million, that's not going to happen. And this is why it's not going to happen. But determining all that happens through a feasibility study. And I mean, I agree with what's in your resolution. This doesn't have to be a yours, mine. I mean, it's not a pissing contest. To me, it really is around biting off a smaller piece of the apple, and let's see what we can spearhead here. And I mean, you talked a lot about the partnerships, and that's what this is. It's a partnership between the schools, the county, the city, to the extent that they're able to be of assistance and help guide the project if it's on city land. You're right, we have the assets. That's something that we bring to the table. But I think overarching in this is we are the Santa Fe Public Schools, and if we can be a part of a grand city-county housing initiative, then that would be fantastic, and we'll contribute any way that we can. But right now, it's honing this down to 8 to 12 units possibly on a property. I mean, we own property next to Pinon, we own property, a ton of property that's not adjacent to, but it's our property next to Chaparral that could be carved off. We own property in the northern quadrant. There are all sorts of things that could be worked out. In terms of staff, we do have the staff to do this. On the facility side, we have people that know. I know just through my work with Ms. Yonda Wagner and my work with Shirley McDougall, I mean, people that know our properties so intimately, and that's through my work on the Citizens Review Committee. They know every piece of property within the district so intimately that they would be an instrumental part of the feasibility study and saying, hey, this may work here, this won't work here, what about here? And it's like, no, there's, there's way too many hurdles in terms of zoning there. All of that needs to be done in a feasibility study. The idea of our staff, taking them off point and focus, it's like, well, I mean, I would ask the superintendent, how often or how much are our facilities operation people involved in curriculum and instruction? And I would venture the guess is not very much. And so in making, and because Ms. Cashman made the argument, we're taking our staff off point. No, we're not. We're taking the staff that works on this point on point and giving them all of these other experts that they're going to work with the county, with the foundation, with many, maybe others that we don't even know about yet, but others in our community that want to see this happen. And, my sense is, if we try to bite off, I mean, I liked your resolution, but this is not going to happen. I've lived here 27 years. And what I'd like to see happen is something that's doable, something that's in our hands now that we can actually see. And I can actually see this. 10 to 12 families or people moving into units in the July of 2020 because it's a reasonable timeline, it's a reasonable amount of money. We probably have the acreage, well, we do have, to accommodate that number of units, as opposed to maybe needing 12 acres for something much bigger that wouldn't even have occupancy to maybe 2026. What does that do for us? Because one of the things I'd like us all to recognize in line 42 is that we have made a commitment to do what we can to, wrong line, sorry. But our goal around recruiting and retaining. This is positioned as a recruiting tool so that when, so our director Elias and others have to go, I don't know if he goes on the road with them, but when they go to Lubbock and then people in Lubbock are saying, well, what do you pay and all these things, it's like, well, you could come to Hobbs and make $35,000 a year and live in Hobbs, not to knock Hobbs at all, but you could probably get a 4-bedroom house in Hobbs for $700 a month, okay? And but we want you to come to Santa Fe, but you're only paying $35, but the housing is going to be $1,000 a month. What are you, crazy? This gives them the incentive, but a lot of that is also found in the feasibility study. So I would hate us to limit our options by even limiting the option to look into it further, and that's all this resolution does. It looks into it further. It gets a group of people together. Yeah, I don't care if we call it a working group. I don't care if we call it a brain trust. I don't care about any of that. What I care about is we get the experts together from our district and the county and the city, and the consultants that are necessary, and finance people that Juhi is connected to, that we get all of these people in a room and say, how can we get occupancy in July of 2020? And when I read or see not just this resolution, but sweeping ideas by other groups in the city, I'm just taken back to the rail yard, and I'm taken back to Catalyst, and I'm taken back, or Catalyst, whatever they're called, and to the rail yard project. We have a 10-year anniversary, right, on the rail yard? 10 years. That's great. But it took to 2008 to get this done. And we started doing this in like 1992, okay? And that's what happens in Santa Fe. In just a second, okay, Grace? And that's, because I want you to be one of the partners. The union needs to be a partner in this because you represent the teachers. But that's what happens in Santa Fe when sometimes the ideas are too sweeping. This isn't sweeping, it's targeted. But it has to have a feasibility study to start with. And so the idea here was a first reading, tweak the language. The second set of be it resolves on yours, Kate, I think just aligns perfectly with a lot of the be it resolves in this, right? I think it's very valuable. And I think that when it comes time for the district to be part of the larger community conversation, I think you would probably be the most knowledgeable, perfect person to be the Santa Fe Public Schools representative there, because you know more than I think all of us put together. I don't think it's necessary to wait for Rudy. If Rudy wanted to, he could have called in, and he didn't. And I think that there are people that I've worked with the county that have just as much or more knowledge about housing and economic development than Mr. Garcia has. And that's not to disparage Rudy in any way, but there's a reason I went to the people that I went to. One, I couldn't talk to him because of the OMA, but there's a reason I went to the people that I went to, because they could say, if they had said to me when we met in that conference room on that day, Steve, you know what? You're this dreamer, but this is not gonna work, it doesn't have legs, and these are the reasons why. Then I wouldn't have put in umpteen number of hours, neither would have Justin, neither would have Juhi. But that's not how the answer came back. The answer came back, this has legs, this is exciting.
President Carrillo, can I?
No, you can do it when I'm done, because that's the way it works. Well, and just, so.
I mean, you realize you don't have the votes right now, so I don't know why you're doing this. I mean.
You know what right now, Grace? Please, because I'm the president of the board, I'm a board member, I've been elected my constituents to do precisely. Please, Grace, you interrupt me all of the time.
All the time?
Please.
This is the first time I've ever done this, because
to
I support this initiative, but you're kind of going off on a tangent, and you're not making this any easier.
You are out of order, Grace. You are out of order, Grace.
Okay.
So I would ask, Kate, that you realize this is a piece of what you want to do. And I would ask you to move it to the next level, to a second reading, and then to a feasibility study. Because this is the beginning of what you want. And I want us to partner the way that you want to partner as well. Ms. Cashman.
Just a couple of things, listening to both of you talk. I can tell you're both passionate about getting housing for our staff at a price that they can afford. How you go about it, I think you do have differences of how to accomplish that. So what I would recommend right now is that maybe both of you sit down and work together to, you know, I've told you where I feel on this, okay, and I'm really honest. I don't think our staff has this expertise. I do think our facility staff works with our curriculum, because we're planning buildings. You know, I don't see that they're sitting around having a lot of extra time. I need them on job sites or repairing my roofs, or working my security. I mean, so I don't think that's the right department, that they have the expertise to decide whether a property is good for housing. Those are specialists. And we're not in the housing market. But what I would, maybe as a compromise, is that you two both work together. I looked at both resolutions, and you know, I read everything that comes across as a board member. I've looked at both resolutions. Neither one do I support, but I know both of you are passionate about it. So maybe the two of you could work together outside of the board meeting, see if you can come up with something that you think you can get a majority of the board to support. And that's, I agree we need housing, but I just don't think that's a responsibility of Santa Fe Public Schools. I think it's a responsibility of the county and the city. And I'm also afraid of, even though there's not housing out there, there are people that are renting out their property. If we start to undercut their prices, what are they going to say? I mean, I need them to be supporting the school district. I'm not sure if you offered rent that is below what they can get on the market, that I'd be very happy as a homeowner when I'm depending on that rent. So there are a lot of issues, and I don't think we should be in the housing, but maybe the two of you could work outside of the board meeting, try to get something that you can both agree on and think you can get the support of the rest of the board.
I think we need to move this forward to a second reading of the resolution. It doesn't, obviously tonight we don't vote on the feasibility study. That's not what the action item is. It's simply moving the resolution to a second reading. It's allowing the county, probably at this point, to say we're not going to work with them, they're nuts. But it's allowing the county, at least in the week when they have their resolution, to say, okay, it's, you know, they're going to tweak theirs, they're going to come back and say, Steve, this is what we want you to do with yours. Then we come back on October, I don't know what the dates are, October 2nd, with another rendition of this that is maybe more fine-tuned. Happy to work with you, Kate, on fine-tuning language here, but I would not work on anything that was so large in scope it's going to be dead in the water. I don't have the time, I don't have the patience for that. If I did, I'd probably work in government other than the schools. Dr. Garcia.
So just as you're looking at tweaking language, I just have a friendly suggestion.
Of course.
That you not put a dollar amount tied to the tiers, because those are going to change. And I know that there is a recommendation even now for beginning salary at $44,000. So I just want you to be aware of that, and a friendly suggestion is to maybe leave it to tier 1. The other suggestion that's not real clear, and I'm not sure in the language, but you guys could work that out, is this intended for recruits, or is this intended for people that are currently here? And that can possibly be worked out. I know that we've had difficulty, and I don't know where Ms. Mayer was going with her comment, but I know when we've tried to do recruitment bonuses for hard to recruit teachers, we have not been able to get union agreement. So I just want you to just be aware of that. And then the last thing, I understand the notion of feasibility study, but I do want to make the board clear about, and we'll be talking about this at the finance committee meeting, is that the way that we have been charging staff, we had to change that. And all of the staff pretty much are coming off of operational dollars. The only ones that we can really charge to HB 33 and is it SB 9 also that we're allowed to charge? No, just HB 33, correct? Is they have to be actually administering a project that is tied to SB 9 or HB 33. So that has been a little bit of a shift. We did discuss it with staff, legal staff, and Christy and her team about our capacity around these issues. While we can provide information, we would recommend an outside group really do this, because we don't have the bandwidth on staff to deal with the complexity of the issues that would be involved in this, and that's all I have.
No, you're exactly right. And I mean, Joseph, do you want to speak to the people that you have availability with at the county and all those that you know within people that are available? And then Juhi, if you and Justin would speak to what we talked about relative to, that was the whole reason we met, was getting the seed money to get this going through a feasibility study. Joseph.
President Carrillo, Superintendent Dr. Garcia. So I really like what the dialogue is coming out. I think it is it's somewhat unclear in terms of the resolutions that who is doing what and where and things of that nature. So I think we as a county would be most willing to be able to kind of detail those issues so that we can be in agreement with it. I also had the opportunity to see Member Noble's resolution that passed night. Quite frankly, my commentary was I thought that was very good. It is kind of all-encompassing. And we do actually have an initiative currently going with both the city and the county and several organizations such as the Chamber of Commerce, the Home Builders, the Board of Realtors, and many of the organizations that actually create housing to be able to do just exactly as you did. And I think we would love to encourage the school system as part of this resolution or something concurrent with it to be able to participate in that, because that's what it is. Advocating for good policies. One of those policies, in fact, actually our first policy that we're attacking is in fact accessory dwelling units. So it's concurrent exactly in terms of the kind of things of the processes. So I don't think these have to be separated.
Is that the housing coalition you're talking about?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And so that being said, we needed space as the county, and we recognize that the Santa Fe school system needs space to be able to have a dialogue and talk about it, right? Because we really couldn't talk any more in any level of detail besides this is a possibility. And without kind of direction from our governing boards, we didn't feel comfortable doing any more than just that. So we just wanted to encourage that if there's a thought that this might look well, I would encourage you to vote for it, because at least that gives the county space to be able to say, yes, there is encouragement by which the school system is looking at this possibility. The details at all have not been worked out. There is no details. And so we just want to make that clear to everybody. Many of the questions that Vice President Coleman had asked, we don't know yet. And they need to be answered in order for, at some point in time, if this is to go through, in order to make a valid decision, because we don't have those answers yet.
Do you need to add to that, or did you hear about the idea of leveraging community partners for seed money and to keep it cost neutral to the district?
Yeah, Mr. President and members and Dr. Garcia. You know, at this point, we've been volunteering to sort of stand this up and to find the right players that have the expertise. And so myself, with my background in land use and development, can provide pro formas and some of the structures for some ideas and some best practices. But we're going to test everything to find out if this demand is there and what the price you know, per square foot is versus what the savings is, what the financing mechanisms are. That, you know, it's a complex, you know, collage of things that gets put together, but we have to start the study, and the study starts very tactically with the school district focusing on their own problems. If the school district wants to participate with the county to deal with county sheriffs or emergency services, that's great. That's probably phase 2. But to be able to actually solve your problem 10 teachers at a time is pretty impressive, and you move the needle faster than the big cloud of the community can probably get something that doesn't solve your problem except at the margins. This really is strategic and solves the school district's problems, and that is our goal with this. So, thank you.
Thank you, Justin. You don't have to add anything if you don't want to, but if you want to talk about how the meeting with you and me and Justin, that was way over my head for most of it, but around how you kind of do all this, how you bring all these philanthropic partners into stuff like this.
President Carrillo and Superintendent and members of the board, we have funders coming together right now and talking about how we fund housing together in a way that's collaborative. So if we don't have a funding for this specific project right now, the door's there to talk about it because we all recognize the importance of the issue. So it's not a direct answer, but I think I'm here because we are interested in addressing housing with school as a partner. Joseph mentioned it, but a lot of the resolution that Snowball, you presented is being addressed by coalition from the way we understand it. And I think school coming to the table as a potential partner may be welcomed. I can't speak for them, but I think there will be an interest there. And whether it's broader property assessment or this specific project, coming to the table with something to offer, with assets that you own, is an interesting way to come to the table to change the dialogue around what the options are for the whole community as well. So I think it will be a welcome addition to what already exists as a collaboration to address an important issue.
Thank you. I don't know that I have anything substantive to add at this time, except that this is just getting the ball rolling. It's just a first reading of this resolution. I would really hope, I'm not sure on Lorraine's health, but I would certainly hope that Rudy could be here on October 2nd, and that we could move at least the feasibility study forward by moving this forward tonight. And unless either of you have anything else to add, we could vote.
So I think it's a shame that Ms. Mayer left. I really did want to hear what she had to say, but apparently, well, she had more to say than that, I think, and it's because she does represent our teachers union, our large teachers union in the schools, and you know, if we are going to address this 10 teachers at a time, I think it would be valuable to hear from her. And I guess, you know, I appreciate Vice President Cashman saying that, you know, we're clearly passionate about this and see things differently and working towards a compromise. Because I do feel, and clearly there is, you know, you can, The reason I wrote the resolution I wrote in May the way I did is because I think we need to have a larger context around housing. And a lot of it was designed to acknowledge that and acknowledge that this is not about a handful of units for a handful of teachers, but a real systemic issue that needs to be addressed. And I do keep up with the Housing Coalition in the form of one of the members who is a good friend of mine, whom most of them know who that is, and who, you know, we do actually hang out and nerd out on things like affordable housing and economic development, because some of us find that fun to talk about. You know, again, we can disagree on the intent and how it should be approached. I want the context, you want something really specific. What this resolution says is that we are forming a strategic housing working group comprised of requisite staff from the Santa Fe Public Schools and designated representatives from Santa Fe County to develop and embark on a strategic housing feasibility study to be completed and presented to the board no later than Tuesday, January 29th, 2019, right around when the legislative session gets started that would tackle this gigantic thing like a sufficiency lawsuit. It also talks about a feasibility study that will address development costs, a market study including the district demand and the client needs, not clear who the client is. I think it's clients for affordable housing, so I think that means teachers. A financing study, in other words, how we would financing this, site survey and assessment, and the regulatory environment. That's what it says. And that's a huge amount of specificity for a strategic housing working group to do. And honestly, I would rather put together a coherent scope of work in a feasibility study and, you know, vote as a board to RFP it to get some experts to do this, because I completely agree with Vice President Cashman's. You know, we have folks who know our facilities really well and know what they need for schools, but I agree we don't have, and I feel like I've been making this point a lot, we don't have, affordable housing is a very distinct expertise. So, you know, I appreciate the work. I appreciate the desire to move this forward, to get things going, to have the school district come to the table. I don't think anybody else has passed a resolution to participate in the Housing Coalition. I really appreciate all this, but I can't vote for what this says. And, you know, I do want to work on this. I do want to work on housing, but what this asks to do is to form a group that will do a pretty complex feasibility study with a number of specified areas that feasibility study will look at. And in my experience, that's a very complex thing that involves a lot of specific expertise. And I would like us to do this. If we're going to go at the specific end, I think it would be good to include language that nods to the larger system and understanding of what's going on. And I think that we should allocate some money to do a feasibility study of our property in a way that will be durable for this district, for housing or anything else, but particularly to look at this. And I don't think, I mean, this also says 12 units, and I understand, you've said 8 to 12, and there's a lot of wiggle room in what we've heard tonight, but it's just not what this says. And so I guess I'm not willing to move something forward that I have this much discomfort with the specifics around. So I'm happy to move forward in a number of ways, but voting for this resolution in front of me tonight is not one of them.
Okay. No, I mean, so it sounds like, one, you're hung up on the word working group. And I say hang up on because of the way you said it, and you've mentioned it many times. Doesn't matter if it's called a working group, doesn't matter if it's called a study consortium. It's but the whole point of a first reading is If you want something in there, put something in there. I mean, I like the idea of adding some of the more global things to this resolution. And the things that you have in your second be resolve, saying the Santa Fe Public Schools commits to, and saying that, okay, we are going to engage with partners on a larger scale for larger units. You kept coming back to 8 to 12 units. And I kept saying over and over, and they kept saying as well, which leads me to believe that you're attached to saying no rather than being open, is that the feasibility study determines the number of units. This is just the idea of not 200, okay, not 200 right now to encompass the global housing challenge for the entire county, because that is not within our purview. We don't have the staff to do that. We do have the staff that knows every square foot of every square acre of all of our properties. We have that. And so a superintendent would then tap into those people that we have. The county has their staff that they tap into all the time, and then there are others that we would contract with very likely, and that we'd raise money to contract with it. But, but the idea of having, and this is where I think boards get hung up, not just ours, but boards in general. If you don't like something, what do you like, and let's add it. If you want to change language here, let's change it. What do you want to change it to? Because if we keep just, and this happens in council meetings, it happens all over the place. Just constantly voting up and down on things never moves the needle, ever. What moves the needle is, what do you want and how can we make it happen? Your concern is people other than teachers, right? Yes, we absolutely in the next legislature need to address that. We need to address teachers in general, and we'll find out through the feasibility study as to how many and whether or not this is opened up to tier 2 and tier 3 as well, right? We'll look at that. This isn't supposed to be permanent housing. And I know that when you're looking at the strategic or affordable housing issue, we're looking at a family maybe moving into a unit that wants to stay there for 12 years. No, 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 that's not the purpose here. We'll find out more in the feasibility study. The purpose is we're going to Lubbock and saying, look, come to Santa Fe. We can put you in a really nice duplex, okay, while you're tier 1 for 3 years. Because if you don't want to be tier 2 after 3, then maybe you don't even want to be a teacher anymore. And we can offer this for, 2-bedroom for $750 instead of $1,000. Just throwing those out there. Those aren't the numbers. Those numbers are determined by the feasibility study. And so it's just, I come back to this, and sometimes I'm not willing to accept defeat, and where there's maybe 2 votes against. I personally will not address this issue again in my tenure during this term or the next one, because we have the opportunity right now, it is in our hand, to have maybe 14 families move in to condominiums that we helped happen. We have the opportunity right now, tonight, to at least move a resolution forward to make this happen, and the move-in is in July 2020. I personally am not coming back to this. The board doesn't have the stomach for it, and obviously there's 2 members missing, but if the board doesn't have the stomach for that, not the stomach, that's not the right word. If the board doesn't see that this aligns with our goals as a board and as a district, because it truly does align, and then it's also good for the community. If we can't see that, then I want everyone out there to see that we are failing them in this issue tonight. That's how I feel. And then you can call for a vote when you want to.
I appreciate you coming tonight, okay? I think what you've heard from the board is, at least right now, I don't think we're ready to move on. We have some internal discussions or external, but I do think that the board, we know we have property, we have land, and we know that at least in a real foreseeable future, that land is not going to be built on because we don't have children. So there's an opportunity for you to go to the county and say, the board couldn't get to where you would have liked us to be, but there is land that the school district might consider donating to be used for housing for teachers. I'm not, we have 2 board members that are missing, and I know people are talking about different things. I've got the best piece of property for this initiative, but I'm not going to bring it up here right now. But But,
Or how, no, I'm just kidding.
no. But it probably makes the most sense for our teachers, for our community, but I don't think the board is ready to move on. I appreciate all your hard work, but we just can't get, you know, for me, it is that, you know, I think we need to be concentrating on education issues. And I know paying our teachers, providing our teachers good livelihood keeps our teachers here, but, you know, they're going to have the same problem 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Santa Fe is a very, very expensive housing market. It doesn't have a lot of rentals. It's expensive to live here. It's expensive to work here. And until we can solve that for all of our staff, because I know we have some of our teachers that are making the top salaries and they're struggling too. And so in good conscience, for me, I can't take one group of teachers. I mean, that's why I don't like the bonuses that the state is giving out to teachers right now. It sends the wrong message to all those teachers that are working hard every day for us. But you weren't just at that, and I know, having been in government, giving somebody a bonus isn't making them work harder. It's not. You know, and so we demoralize our staff, but I think we do need to call the question because I'm not sure we're ready to move. I would like both of you two to work because I could tell there's passion there. I'd like both of you, if you could see a way to work through so you don't fail this community if you feel strongly about it, but we need to get a little bit closer to where we are right now on the issue. But thank you for coming. We're not saying there's no property to use for an initiative like this. There probably is, but we're just not, can't get there, or in my opinion, I don't think we can get there tonight.
Yes, Ms. Noble.
Well, I do hope that we can continue to work on this. You know, one of the lines in the resolution was that we would investigate land assets for potential housing development or land swaps with other entities pursuing housing development. And to some extent, you know, I think there you can always say if we don't do it tonight, or if we had done this in May, or all of the things. And part of the reason I did actually mention looking at this was I hoped that you would consider adding some of the language, which maybe it's there in the whereas is the larger. No, I understand, but the thing is, it's not there, and you know, to rewrite the resolution in a rather laborious way right now, you know, what it says, I don't know. I don't know how to rewrite it. I can't do it because it is so substantially specific around this group and this feasibility study, and it says that there's no cost and all these things. So I do think that we can go away and do some work on this, and that we can bring something back that would work better. And I really appreciate the community partnership and the effort that's already gone into this, and I don't want that to, you know, come to nothing. I think we do have a part to play, but the specifics here are pretty far from the mark, and I think we need to rethink what a responsible feasibility study would look at, and that we need to think about how this partnership with other governmental entities could work as well. So I do hope we can continue to think about this and find the way, because you know, sometimes, I mean, we all, and I think that is our role as a body here, is that we all have our imagination as to how it's exactly going to go, and then we work together and ideally the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, because we can all work together and think things through. And I really appreciate the variety of different perspectives from the people on this board who are outside of my head and don't have the same preconceived notions as to how it's going to go that I do. So, you know, I hope we can work on this.
Yes, I'm sorry, Joseph.
President Carrillo, clearly there's a lot of dialogue that needs to happen. We just wanted to say at the county, we'd be more than willing to assist and facilitate something that all the members could agree on, and we'd be very supportive of course, bringing in the city of Santa Fe. As you know, the current person there is one of my former staff people, and so we'd be more than happy to, if given the permission, to be able to come together and try to work out any issues that we feel that we can work out some of the issues, because it does seem to me there's an issue of detail, and what I'm hearing is there's a willingness, and we don't want to lose that opportunity. So I don't know what the procedural issues are, but we are more than willing to help facilitate as a neutral party to make sure that all the concerns can be taken care of.
Thank you very much. Justin, do you have anything to add, or?
So, Mr. President and Member Noble, I'm happy to be a resource for this, to flesh out where we've gotten to, what we think the next steps are, how to make a feasibility plan as affordable and as effective and as scoped properly to make sure that you feel comfortable initiating something like that. I volunteered at this point to do this. I can take it a little further along just to try to get us a little to something that is feasible, because as I love these global initiatives, but we have to act locally, and if globally the whole community addresses this is great, but the city is going to bite off something bigger than it can chew probably, and it's going to take a lot longer. So if we can be the shining example of something that gets something done in this community, and for all of the great intentions, not getting something done ruins all the great intentions. So let's just move the ball forward. That was my request. So thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. So there you have it. We're going to vote on this. So this is agenda item 10A, the first reading of Resolution 2018-19-5, Santa Fe Public Schools Strategic Housing Initiative. Well, you'll just kill it by not even seconding it. So all those in favor of the motion, or I make a motion to approve. Is there a second? There's no second.
Well, I'll second it so we can take a vote on
Okay.
it.
Second, just so we can take a vote. And in that case, is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. And there you have it. And my last parting thing is an incredible lost opportunity.
It doesn't have to be President Carrillo. I've heard 2 people said they would work with board members on this. We have 2 board members sitting here that are passionate about it.
I know.
I would hope that you guys could see your way through to working with people that are willing to help you move
Then
into
on that,
something.
not about me and Kate at all. It's about whether or not people want to move in 2020 or 2028. So I'm ending this. We're moving to advanced planning. Anybody have anything for advanced planning? Hearing none, we're adjourned.